Looking to get that illegal migration bill off the ground, like the flights to Rwanda, and he could be about to bypass the House of Lords. I'll fill you in on detail of that on the day that it's emerged, the true extent of the amount of Albanians who have managed to abscond into our society. Shock, horror. Also, we're going to be talking about Starmer versus the unions. Yes, has he managed to anger his base? His drive to just stop oil, who, you know, are giving the Labour Party a lot of money, is managing to really rile up the unions. How is he going to wriggle out of that one? Old Keith. And finally, as well, we're going to be talking about this. It is the 79th anniversary of D-Day. I want to know, when we look around at the country right now, have we done our brave military heroes proud? Patrick Christys on GB News. GBviews at gbnews.com. Get those emails flooding in thick and fast. We are all over this Prince Harry court case today. You cannot take your eyes and ears off it. I will have to-the-minute updates as, like I've said, Prince Harry continues to be picked apart. But now it's your headlines.
Thank you very much, Patrick. I'm Rory Smith in the GB newsroom. Well, as you've been hearing, Prince Harry accuses the British government of being at rock bottom. The Duke of Sussex is giving evidence in London against the publisher of the Daily Mirror over alleged unlawful information gathering. He said our country is judged globally by the state of our press and our government. He also accuses the press of having blood on their hands during his cross-examination at the High Court. Mirror Group Newspapers denies all allegations. Meanwhile, the US government will be challenged in court over its decision to give the Duke of Sussex a visa in 2020. It's after Prince Harry's admissions of illegal drug use in his book Spare. It's not known if he admitted this for the visa application. US official policies say that visa applicants who are found to be drug users or addicts are inadmissible. One of ITV's senior management team has defended the company's duty of care, telling MPs there's a significant system of safeguarding in place. Magnus Broke has been questioned in Parliament over the broadcaster's handling of Philip Schofield's affair with a younger male colleague. He also says bullying is absolutely in breach of his company's code of conduct amid allegations of a toxic work environment. ITV Chief Executive Dame Caroline McCall is being called to appear at the committee on June the 14th to answer questions. Downing Street says the government is willing to agree another way forward rather than taking legal action against the COVID inquiry. The inquiry asked the Cabinet Office to return former Prime Minister Boris Johnson's notebooks to him by June the 12th to compare them to the redacted copies already provided. Baroness Heather Hallett says she will not be commenting on the legal row due to pending litigation. The counsel for the inquiry, Hugo Keith, says the Cabinet Office is only seeking to ensure that national security protected material was not going to be disclosed by Mr Johnson.
Mr Johnson has offered to provide the inquiry with assistance directly. We're grateful to him for his cooperation, and the inquiry team has been liaising with his legal team to arrange for the inspection of the unredacted WhatsApps that he had provided to the Cabinet Office, but which he has had returned to him. We expect to begin that inspection this week.
The Foreign Secretary says damage to a major dam in Ukraine is a catastrophe and an abhorrent act. Thousands of people are being evacuated from their homes after the 2-mile-long dam in southern Ukraine was severely damaged. Ukraine accuses Russia of blowing it up, but a member for Putin's United Russia Party accuses Ukraine of a war crime by carrying out the attack. Hundreds of homes, streets and businesses have been flooded. All boat operations have been suspended off Bournemouth Pier following the death of 2 young swimmers last week. A local council spokesperson says it's pending a conclusion to the police investigation. An inquest into the deaths of the 2 youngsters heard they were part of a group thought to have been caught up in a riptide in the sea. Post-mortem examination proceedings are adjourned until September. Ryanair has cancelled 400 flights amid a French air traffic controller strike. Some of the impacted flights are to and from the UK and Ireland. A petition calling for the European Commission to protect flights over France during their strikes has so far been signed by over 1.1 million people. The Veterans Memorial Service is taking place, marking the 79th anniversary of the D-Day landings. The Secretary for Defence, Ben Wallace, is in France for the service, alongside French President Macron, on the anniversary of the 1944 Normandy landings. Also in attendance is Léon Gautier, the last surviving member of the French commandos who stormed the Normandy beaches, defended by Hitler's troops. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now, though, back to Patrick.
Well, here we go. There is only one place to start, and that is Prince Harry's dramatic day at the High Court. He's been accusing the press of having blood on their hands, branded newspaper journalists the mothership of online trolling. His witness statement said this: "Trolls react and mobilise to stories they create. People have died as a result, and people will continue to kill themselves by suicide when they can't see any other way out. How much more blood will stain their typing fingers before someone can put a stop to this madness?" He is very open about this. He's on a one-man mission to cure the British press. However, it has not been a good day overall for Prince Harry in court. Why? Well, the Mirror Group have taken 3 major lines of attack on him, and so far every single one has landed. They say that Prince Harry didn't actually read many of the articles which he claims have caused him distress, which is, you know, a killer blow, really. They've also said as well that much of the information that Harry is claiming was obtained unlawfully was actually already in the public domain, so again, another killer blow. They are also saying that when it came to what distress was caused, particularly in relation to his drug taking, that was distress more caused out of embarrassment as opposed to the article not being true or obtained unlawfully. Harry looks like a man who has turned up to court half-cocked. Let's speak to GB News' royal correspondent Cameron Walker, who is outside the High Court. And Cameron, yes, I mean, it's all been rather polite, but Harry very much on the back foot, doesn't seem so prepared.
Yeah, it's certainly polite, Patrick, inside the courtroom, but it is most definitely a grilling from Andrew Green, KC, representing Mirror Group newspapers, who is cross-examining Prince Harry in his claim against Mirror Group newspapers. Of course, Prince Harry accuses him of unlawful information gathering. When we got Prince Harry's witness statement this morning, it was incredibly strong words, some of which you just read out in your introduction. He also says that British journalism and the government are at rock bottom. So incredibly strong words there. But as you said, Mr. Andrew Green, KC, has been picking apart the specifics of the 33 articles which Prince Harry which are basically being tested in Prince Harry's case against Mirror Group papers. He is going through this forensically in minute detail and questioning Prince Harry's witness statement to the nth degree. Let me show you. Let me tell you. So I've just come from a little bit of the afternoon session in there, and Mirror Group newspaper's barrister was talking about an article written on 29th of March 2002, Harry's kissing disease, referring to his diagnosis of glandular fever. And the article quotes a St James's Palace spokesperson, and she talks about how Prince Harry was feeling much better. And he asked Prince Harry, "Are you aware that there were a number of articles, not just the Mirror, writing this story up?" And Prince Harry said, "The palace do not comment on private matters, and the only reason that they would comment on private matters, as they did do in this case, was because they were fed or given or asked about a specific lead that a journalist had." And Mirror Group newspaper essentially said, "Are you aware that?" as I said, there's a number of articles written around the same time by various different news organisations. Another article actually refers to Prince Harry's birthday party and the fact that it's just going to be a private family affair rather than a big shindig. That information Mirror Group newspapers was putting to Harry actually came from an interview he did with the Press Association rather than any particular phone hacking. What seems to be the big contrast here is the barrister for News Group newspapers is very much going in on specifics and trying to see exactly how much Prince Harry knows about the 33 articles written about him, trying to test just how distressed he was at the time when he read the articles at the time of publication, something Prince Harry said he's not going to speculate on. He did not admit to reading some of those 33 articles at the time of publication, and Prince Harry at the moment seems to be talking in much more broad terms, which perhaps isn't making him look too good in court. But the case continues. He's expected to give evidence all afternoon into tomorrow, and the whole trial is expected to last 6 to 7 weeks.
Cameron, I just want to ask you before I throw it over to Michael Cole for a bit more comments on what we've got here. What's Harry looking like in court at the moment? What does he seem to be? What's his aura? What's his kind of general demeanour?
Well, when he first arrived at court this morning, Patrick, I was actually inside the corridor and saw him and away from the cameras, and he wasn't putting on a show for the cameras this morning. He generally seems confident. He definitely seemed like he was smiling. Of course, it's an open court, so members of the public are allowed to be inside as well, and there's a number waiting outside the courtroom, waiting for somebody to come out so they can go in, and they are cheering and smiling and waving at Prince Harry, and he is happy to smile at them and wave back. In terms of inside the courtroom itself, he seems very calm, very measured. He's not getting flustered. He's not getting frustrated. He is answering the barrister's questions. So it doesn't seem like he's getting particularly frustrated or defensive, as we perhaps have seen him be on a couple of occasions recently, particularly during the promotional interviews for his book Spare.
Cameron, thank you very much. Cameron Walker, our royal correspondent. So Cameron's outside the High Court. He'll be nipping back into it as well. So we are bang on the scene for this. But I'm joined in the studio by royal commentator Michael Cole. Michael, this is fascinating. The reason I asked Cameron there about what Harry's demeanour was like, and he said he was cool, calm, collected, happy, I think that screams delusional, because from the excerpts of this that I have seen, and we have got live updates here in front of me here, he's being asked a series of pertinent questions that in a court of law you cannot fudge. How on earth do you know that this information was obtained by phone hacking? I don't. How on earth do you know that this information only came from that? I don't. Then they say, are you aware that this information about numerous articles was already in the public domain? He was not aware. The latest, did you write your own witness statement? It turns out he may well have relied on his lawyers. I mean, this is not a great day for Harry.
No, Prince Harry is a man on a mission, one might say on a crusade. What we've heard today so far is his truth. The hurt is raw, the belief is deep, but what there isn't is any proof. And court cases turn on evidence. And unless he can come up with evidence, definitive proof in any one of these 33 instances of alleged illicit news gathering by Mirror Group newspapers, the case cannot go his way, because the judge, and it's not being heard by a jury who may have been more sympathetic, it's being heard by a judge. And even if he bends over backwards to give the benefit of the doubt to the prince, unless he can prove what he's saying, and so far there's been no killer blow, let's be honest about it, no knockout blow. They're still sparring, but he's not making any progress. You say delusional. I tell you what I think is completely misjudged. To say that the government of this country is at rock bottom. Well, it may be, but it's not for him to say, particularly as the Duke of Sussex, a member of the House of Lords, doesn't even have a vote in this country. And with regard to his remark that the British press is also at rock bottom, well, we have the British press laid out on your desk here, all 10 morning newspapers. Where he lives in Los Angeles, there's one struggling newspaper, and that's the same in most conurbations in America. So I don't think the British press, in all its glory, is to be sneered at in that way. He didn't need to do it.
No. I want to give people a couple of examples of the kind of thing that Harry has been grilled on in court. Both of them are restaurant-related, OK? One of them, remarkably, is Pizza Express, by the way. But one of them is about a restaurant in the Chelsea area he was going to with his friends, and he was saying that he thought his phone had been hacked, which is why information about that meeting got out there. It had a celebrity chef. There was a group of friends. It was an incredibly busy gastro pub, and it's on one of the busiest streets in London.
And I think a photographer was there.
And a photographer was there, OK? So this isn't, it would appear anyway, phone hacking. And if it was, Harry, crucially, cannot or is not yet providing any evidence of it. The other one, a Daily Mail article from the 12th of September 2000 called Pizza Prince. The Mirror article repeats the gist of what is written in the Mail, and this is important for a lot of people. A lot of people watching and listening to this who consume the media will understand that very often stories are recycled journalism, as it's known, OK? So the argument there is that it wasn't even anything to do with the Mirror, so therefore why is that happening there? He's asked then, do you recall this article? To which he says, no, I don't. And then he's asked, well, how can it have caused you any distress then?
Well, what's the fatal attraction between members of the royal family and pizza restaurants? I think that's another one we could look into at another time. But if you take another specific case, as a child he had glandular fever, known as the kissing disease, and this story got into the public domain. Well, how did it get into the public domain? There was a broad spectrum of newspapers that carried this story, which suggests to me, with my experience, that there had been some briefing, that this had been briefed out, that it had happened. And maybe the Mirror presented it as the kissing disease and others presented it in a more clinical way. We don't know. But it has been suggested that the person who was briefing it out was the chief spin doctor of Prince Harry's father. When it said St James's Palace, that can only mean, because that's where the now king was then based at that time. He was based at St James's Palace. That's where he was running things from. And his chief spin doctor knew all these. It was in his business to know newspaper editors and newspaper photographers. So it's a very strange thing. The way it's going, he's got to come up with the proof. And so far, we have seen nothing approaching that.
Yeah, 100%. And as you're talking, I'm just following up on this article published in the Mirror on the 29th of March 2002. This gives it a flavour of how far back we're going here. Harry's kissing disease, you mentioned that exactly. An article quotes St James's Palace spokesperson. So it's not just the idea that this may well not have come from phone hacking. It's also, crucially, he was asked directly in court, Harry was asked, are you aware that the same article, basically, appeared in The Sun as well? No, but my legal team would be. This is a man at the moment, I strongly suspect, given everything that is coming through to us, and it is coming through to us in real time as well, so we will keep you up to date with any developments, but who I would argue has maybe been quite poorly instructed by his legal team and doesn't quite understand the need for actual proof.
Yeah, and I think he doesn't really understand the way the British press works, because he and his wife, Meghan Markle, Duchess of Sussex, were at some stage complaining that the royal rota, which is a way of sharing information between newspapers, was somehow a way that Buckingham Palace had of controlling the British press, as if that was even possible. It was a grave lack of understanding. Of course, I mean, it's no surprise, Patrick, that it's been 130 years since a member of the royal family was unwise enough to go into the witness box, because there's more kicks than halfpennies in doing so. Yeah. I'm sure his late grandmother, the Queen, would have said to him, please don't do this, you cannot win. And even if you do win, what do you win?
Yeah, 100%. Michael, thank you very much for this. You're going to be here with us basically throughout the course of this show. We're going to be keeping you up to date. I'm just going to leave you for a second with this latest excerpt that has just dropped in front of me. Bear in mind that this case is all about trying to prove, from Harry's behalf, that phones were hacked, that there was unlawful information gathering, that caused him huge amounts of distress, and that, therefore, he now has some huge case to bring against the Mirror Group. Are you alleging that something in this article was obtained by phone hacking? Harry, don't know. Has it caused you distress? Harry, no. So there we go. All right, you can get more on this story on our website right now. Simply head to gbnews.com for the best analysis and opinion, as well as the latest breaking news. I can guarantee you that this story is only going to get more and more box office, so make sure you don't take your eyes and ears off it. Prince Harry's court case isn't the only story that we're talking about today, though, because Rishi Sunak is going to potentially ignore the House of Lords and force through his illegal migration bill. I will tell you exactly what all of that means. People are saying it's not before time, by the way, and it comes on the day that the shocking true extent of the amount of Albanian absconders has been revealed. Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Yes, welcome back. In a few minutes, I will have much more on Prince Harry's explosive claims in the High Court. I am getting it in live time here, and I can tell you what, it is pretty damning stuff, actually. Really is a bizarre interaction going on at the moment from Mirror Group's KC and Prince Harry, where Harry seems unable to recall a lot of the articles which he has supposedly anyway brought to court, which is strange to say the least. But Rishi Sunak could defy the House of Lords and force his illegal migration bill through Parliament. The Prime Minister claimed yesterday that his plan to tackle the small boat crisis is starting to work. But a number of high-profile figures in the Lords, including, there he is, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, have spoken out against the bill. Let's speak to our political reporter, Olivia Rutley. Olivia, will he bypass the Lords? Can he? What will it mean?
Well, what Rishi Sunak could do, and the course of action he's threatening to take, is to use the Parliament Act, which is a very
little-known piece of legislation, which would essentially allow him to bypass the Lords. Now, the Parliament Act states that the Commons can overrule the Lords, but he could only enforce it if the Lords were actually simply to vote down the legislation.
Yeah.
What's more likely to happen is that the Lords will amend the legislation so much that it's unworkable, it's pretty much unrecognisable from what Rishi Sunak proposed in the first place, in which case he won't be able to use this unusual piece of legislation. But the fact that he's even talking about doing it, bear in mind, only 7 laws ever have been revoked by the Parliament Act. The last one was the hunting ban in 2004, which the Lords rejected but was pushed through anyway. The fact that Rishi Sunak is even threatening to do that does at least show his intent, that he is very, very serious about this. We know that the Prime Minister has basically staked his whole reputation on stopping the boats. He says it again and again and again. And he is now saying, essentially, he will do whatever it takes to get this piece of legislation through. And he's buoyed up, as you said there at the beginning, by news just in that the number of migrants crossing the Channel in small boats has gone down by 20% now from this time last year, which the Prime Minister says is because of this agreement that he's made with the Albanian Prime Minister to send migrants back. Though some people say the weather's just worse than it was.
Some people do say the weather is worse than it was, absolutely. And I think people will be a bit sick and tired of this bill getting knocked back in the Lords, and the people like the Archbishop of Canterbury, for example, who, from what I can gather, based on what he said, wanted us to offer safe refuge to absolutely everybody now, safe refuge for everybody in the future, and pay through the nose to sort out all of the world's problems as well, which I think, for most people, they would regard that as a little bit of a stretch. Olivia, thank you very much. Olivia Rutley there, our political reporter. Now, I was having a look yesterday. In fact, we were on this show, weren't we? As Rishi Sunak was hailing the success of the Stop the Boats plan, he was talking about mainly, OK, boat crossings have gone down 20%. The French are stopping around 50% more people than they were this time last year. That has cost us around £500 million, though. Not sure that's value for money. But he was also clinging on to the Albania issue, wasn't he? So we've deported 1,800 people back to Albania. We've seen the amount of Albanians crossing the Channel reduced now by around 90%. That is fine, but if you just type in Albania Channel on Google right now, and I would urge you to do this, you end up with a situation where it shows the scale of Albanian Channel migrants crime wave in the UK revealed. The amount of people who, crucially, have absconded, just disappeared into Britain, who are claiming to have been from Albania. The Home Office does not know that amount of people. More than 12,000 Albanian migrants breached their bail conditions. Well, that is fascinating, because 12,000 came across the Channel last year. Joining me now is Michael Fabricant, Conservative MP for Lichfield. Michael, thank you very much. Should Rishi Sunak just swerve the Lords for the good of the country and for the good of the people and for national security?
Well, you know, this is real crisis time when it comes to the boat people, and it's crisis time, if you like, between the House of Commons and the House of Lords, the elected House of Commons and the appointed House of Lords. Now, it may be necessary to invoke the Parliament Act. As you've already heard, it's only been done 7 times before, but this may have to be the 8th time. We've got to try and stop the boats.
Yeah, we do, indeed. There's a poll that came out today that shows half of young Albanian men want to cross the Channel to come to Britain. I would argue that the Stop the Boats policy is not actually really working at the moment. It is more to do with weather.
Yeah, that may be the case. It'll only work when people know that if they come over to the UK, they will be deported either back to Albania or now to Bulgaria, because there are conversations going on with the Bulgarian government, or off to Rwanda to be processed there. Only when there is that credible threat will people realise that going across to the United Kingdom is more risky than it's worth. And incidentally, by the way, the French haven't reduced the amount of times they've stopped people by 50%. They've actually stopped 50% of all crossings. So in fairness to the French, they're doing a half-decent job.
Yeah, indeed. Well, yeah, like you've rightly identified there, a half-decent job. You hit on a good point earlier on, which I think is about the elected House of Commons and the unelected House of Lords. And if we have an historically elected government, because I understand that Rishi Sunak, of course, has not stood for election yet, but the Conservative Party, which has always stood on a ticket of being strong on illegal migration, OK, so people did vote for that. They just didn't vote for this guy to give it to you. And a policy that, if you actually look at the opinion polls and don't just look at Twitter or, you know, what Gary Lineker says, actually is quite popular with the British public. If that is being blocked by, you know, for the most part, a bunch of stuffy people, one of whom is a bishop, should that not just be avoided for the sake of democracy?
Well, I can't help think, the Archbishop of Canterbury feels so strongly about this. He's got a lovely place called the Lambeth Palace, which is occupying several acres. I haven't heard him yet say that he's going to put up 200, 300, 400, 500 migrants, because he could in his extensive garden. So let's hear from you. And the other problem is that, we all represent constituencies. I have around 100,000 people. Some of them are voters, some of them are non-voters. All of them want to use services like getting to see their GP and all the other services that the state provides. But with 5, 6, 7, 8, goodness knows how many more millions of immigrants there are in the United Kingdom, that's becoming more and more difficult. I remember, what William Hague once said, we should be a safe haven, but not a soft touch. And most of the people coming over now, they're not escaping persecution. They're coming from safe countries like France, like Austria, like Germany, yet they are choosing to come to the United Kingdom. So the question is, are we seen as being a soft touch?
No, we absolutely are. And as it currently stands, it's very difficult for Rishi Sunak to stand up and say that the Stop the Boats policy is working. He can indicate some numbers, and that's great, OK? But actually, as long as we have record levels of taxpayers' payment, no flights to Rwanda taking off, and no end in sight, really, when it comes to channel crossings, and no...
We have to
get past the laws.
Patrick, and that's why we've got to change the law. That's why we've got to ignore what the Lord says. And that's why we cannot have the European Court of Human Rights intervening with decisions made by British judges to send people across to Rwanda or other safe locations.
Well, there we go. Michael Fabricant, thank you very much. Great to have you on. It's always great to hear somebody coming out and properly giving their views without fear of cancellation, as Conservative MP for Lichfield and fan favourite Michael Fabricant. But look, there you have it, people, OK? If you want the illegal migration bill to actually go through, at some point it's going to have to go through the Lords. If it can't really go through them of their own volition, is it time, really, that Rishi's got to ram it through, essentially, and do whatever he can in order to do that? I want your views on this. gbviews@gbnews.com. It's not going to get solved either way. The other crucial thing for Rishi Sunak at the minute, which is absolutely laughable, is that the Labour Party is doing a rather good job of positioning itself as being more responsible with our borders than the Conservatives. And when that happens, you know that something has gone seriously wrong. Loads more to come between now and 4 p.m. We will have expert analysis of Prince Harry's big day in court. The latest excerpts of this do not make for good reading for Prince Harry. I'll be telling you all about that when I come back, and find out why Sir Keir Starmer is on a collision course with the unions over Labour's green energy policy. Is it one step forward, 2 steps back for Sir Keir Starmer? But first, it's your latest headlines with Rory.
Cheers, Patrick. Prince Harry accuses the British government of being at rock bottom. The Duke of Sussex is giving evidence in London against the publisher of the Daily Mirror over alleged unlawful information gathering. He said our country is judged globally by the state of our press and our government. He also accuses the press of having blood on their hands during his cross-examination at the High Court. Mirror Group Newspapers denies all allegations. Downing Street says the government is willing to agree another way forward rather than taking legal action against the COVID inquiry. The Cabinet Office has been asked to return former Prime Minister Boris Johnson's notebooks by June the 12th to compare them to the redacted copies already provided. Inquiry Chair Baroness Heather Hallett says she will not be commenting on the legal row due to pending litigation. All boat operations have been suspended off Bournemouth Pier pending a conclusion to a police investigation following the recent deaths of 2 young swimmers. An inquest heard they were part of a group thought to have been caught up in a riptide in the sea. Post-mortem examination proceedings are adjourned until September. Ryanair has cancelled 400 flights amid a French air traffic controller strike. Some of the impacted flights are to and from the UK and from Ireland. A petition calling for the European Commission to protect flights over France during their strikes has so far been signed by over 1.1 million people. That's you up to date, but you can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website. That is gbnews.com.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
All right, let's take a wee look at today's markets. The pound, that will buy $1.2396 and 1.1617 euros. The price of gold, that's sitting at £1,579 and 3 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100, that is at 7,608 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Well, it's Prince Harry's big day in court, and as yet, I strongly suspect that he wishes he hadn't bothered. When you hear some of the excerpts that I am about to read you now of a transcript of what's been going on inside that courtroom, it will absolutely beg a belief that Prince Harry thought that he could stand there or sit there in the witness box and give an account with any kind of proof whatsoever. From what we've heard so far, of course, all of this may change. But we have got with me now Cameron Walker, who's GB News' royal correspondent. He's outside the court. He got very close to Prince Harry earlier. He's been seeing him in the courtroom. You were saying, Cameron, that he seemed quite cool, calm and collected, which is strange. I mean, slightly at all. Whether or not he realises exactly how all of this stuff looks written down, what's coming out of his mouth, I remain unconvinced. They're talking about things now to do with Paul Burrell. They're talking about things now to do with his time in Australia. But look, what's the overall flavour at the moment from inside? Because he hasn't really been able to provide much proof for any of the claims so far, from what we can see.
No, and that does seem to be the problem, Patrick. He seems to be lacking details into some of his claims in the 33 articles being tested in this case. That unlawful information gathering did take place at Mirror Group newspapers' titles, which allowed the journalists to write the stories about him. Now, Andrew Green, Casey, who is representing Mirror Group newspapers, is going through each of those 33 articles with a fine-tooth comb. Forensically, Patrick, he is notorious, this particular barrister, for this, and challenging Prince Harry on his claims. He's been doing it all day. He's expected to be grilling Prince Harry for a day and a half. But as you said in your introduction, and what I told you earlier, Prince Harry does seem very cool, calm, and collected at the moment, and is responding to the barrister's questions fairly. So during cross-examination, just a little bit earlier, just before I'm speaking to you now, the Duke of Sussex was challenged over whether a part of his witness statements, which you have been reading out from earlier, Patrick, was drafted by him or his solicitors. The reason I think perhaps that sparks that comment is he didn't seem very much across the detail of the statements. Now, Prince Harry said in response, this whole witness statement was written by me after a series of video calls with my legal team. And he explained that took place, of course, in California. But I think what was quite interesting and what has perhaps been quite uncomfortable for Prince Harry is in the last couple of hours, the barrister representing Mirror Group newspapers has used his autobiography Spare against him on a couple of occasions. So, for example, in Spare, Prince Harry's quoted as saying a schoolmate must have told someone who told someone, referring to a story about Prince Harry having a haircut or a buzz cut, as it were, when he was at Eton College. Now, Prince Harry told a court, as a young man in my teenage years, I never suspected that my phone was being hacked or those around me were being hacked as well. I couldn't have imagined it. And he said he said some of his book was written with hindsight and based on my memories at that time in my life. Firstly, as a young man, secondly, as a soldier, and then as a father with 2 young children. And Mr. Green, barrister representing Mirror Group newspapers, he made the point that actually what he just said reflects the reality that because of who you are, as in Prince Harry, and where you were, there were always going to be different routes that people could get information from you. So not necessarily unlawful information gathering or phone hacking or blagging or hiring private investigators to essentially do your alleged dirty work. They were friends, unfortunately, who would talk to the press, or friends of friends who would talk to the press. That is the point that he put to Prince Harry. Prince Harry responded. Some people that probably was the case sometimes, and sadly, a lot of those friends who I became paranoid with at the time are no longer my friends. Well, the case continues here at the High Court, Patrick. Clearly, there's a lot of articles to go through, and the whole trial is expected to last 6 or 7 weeks. But Prince Harry's expected here all of today and a bit of tomorrow as well.
Cameron, thank you very, very much. Cameron Walker there, who's outside the High Court for us, our royal correspondent. When we knew that Harry was going to court, I think many people assumed that he would turn up on top of his brief with a very well-executed plan for what he was going to say when he was in that witness box. And that's not happened. I'm going to read you an excerpt now of something that I've got in front of here, and it refers to an article. This is article number 12, I believe, of the 33 that are up for debate in this particular hearing. And it relates to a time when Harry was in Australia and about whether or not he was going to have to cut a gap year or a trip short. And the Mirror Group's lawyer is saying to him, and this follows the exact pattern of pretty much every single story that has been read out to the court so far, which is, here's the headline, here's how you felt about it, and are you aware that the quote given in this article was not actually from phone hacking or nefarious means? It was either someone close to you, in this case, someone who actually worked at the palace. He has then read the statement that was published a day earlier in a different newspaper. So, again, it would appear that the Mirror's hands are clean there. And then he says, can you see the similarities? I can see the similarities, says Harry. Michael Cole joins me now, of course, royal commentator of note, absolute legend when it comes to all things royal. I cannot get my head around how unprepared Prince Harry appears to be, including about details of his own witness statement. It's bizarre.
He's either ill-prepared or ill-advised, because if he thought that this was going to be a cakewalk, an easy progression of him presenting his truth, he's completely wrong. All of us, journalists who spend a lot of time polishing the seat of our trousers in courts, know that every case turns around on cross-examination, and this is certainly happening now. The King's Counsel, Andrew Green, who's representing Mirror Group newspapers, he's not being tough, he's being very polite, he's doing his job forensically going through it all. And what is coming up time after time is that Prince Harry has got no answer to these questions. And I think that's extraordinary, because a responsible firm of solicitors would have said to him, we can't go to court with this if you can't back it up, because the hurt is raw, the belief is profound, the anger is incandescent, but what it is not is proof, evidence. Now, this case is going to turn on evidence. There is no jury there who might be sympathetic to him. The judge is going to have to decide the thing by what is presented to him. He's got nothing else.
Absolutely.
Only nothing else.
And this sums it up, Michael. Again, every single time I check the transcripts, it's continually updating in front of me here. They're talking about Paul Burrell, and they're talking about an article which appeared to indicate that Prince Harry had referred to Paul Burrell as a, I can't use the word, but a two-faced swear word, OK? And the allegation appears to be that Harry believes that may well have come through some kind of voicemail hacking, OK? So the lawyer says, you say that you referenced to him as won't repeat it, was left on a voicemail for your brother. Do you remember leaving a voicemail saying that? Harry's response, no, because it was a long time ago. Well, you're in court today, Harry. You better start remembering stuff.
Well, of course, both princes felt betrayed by their mother's butler, Paul Burrell, when he started writing books and saying other things and becoming a well-known personality in his own right. Of course, they resented that, and they felt he shouldn't have done it. They were also very cross when Princess Diana's former secretary, Patrick Jeffson, wrote a book as well. They felt that was a betrayal. And, of course, there is good cause for that. And believe me, Patrick, I'm sympathetic with the guy to some extent. He's had a very difficult life. But the question in this courthouse, in this court, in this instance, is whether Mirror Group newspapers and their titles acted illicitly, illegally, blagging and hacking and paying people off and doing illicit observation of him when it shouldn't have done, and also of his friends like his girlfriend Chelsea Davy. I'm sympathetic to him. From that reason, I can still see the small boy as he was and the soldier that he was. And in those days, surprisingly enough, he seemed to be the happy prince. It doesn't seem to be that way today. So I'm surprised that he isn't better prepared, because he's going to have to try and prove this. Assertion is not proof.
No, and this is it. And this is the very latest excerpt that I have in front of me now, and this dropped minutes ago, and this is in relation to the 16th article, well worth people remembering as well. This is in relation to 33 overall articles that Harry is...
Started off with 144.
Started off with 144, whittled down to a cool 33 articles. So we're on the 16th now, and the article headline is, "When Harry Met Daddy, the biggest danger to wildlife in Africa." And this details relationships with Chelsea Davy, of course, is one of his famous exes, and having met her father for the first time. It refers to various business interests in Africa, OK? Miss Davy's uncle, Paul, is quoted in this. So the lawyer for the Mirror Group asks, "Are you aware that Paul Davy gave an interview to the Mail on Sunday, the day before this article in the Mirror?" Again, worth remembering, we are all here now in this situation because Harry is trying to say that there was unlawful information gathering, potentially phone hacking, etc. by the Mirror. Harry's response, no. He wasn't aware that Paul Davy had given a quote to the Mail on Sunday, different newspaper, the day before. Have you been shown articles that show that these articles that have been shown? Some of them, yes, but not to a huge extent. And this is just absolutely bonkers, again, that we're in this situation where Harry is talking about articles which he is claiming and his legal team are claiming were gathered through unlawful means, but have demonstrably been published by other outlets before, and quote people who are not making any secret out of the fact that they were being quoted in these articles.
It's amazing. It's worth remembering, Patrick, that these articles we're talking about, the famous 33, the youngest one is 12 years old. The other ones are up to 26 years old. And at that time, Prince Harry was third in line to the throne. Of course there was interest in him. He was a famous person. There was legitimate press, public interest in him, as there would be. And what he is not factoring in, although I think they've been on the edges of this, other members of the royal family were talking to the media if it suited them. His mother, from time to time, talked to the media, phoned people up, told them things, or put them right about stories which she felt was wrong. So there was a lot of briefing going on by a lot of people. What he's got to prove to the satisfaction of the judge, on a balance of probabilities, is that those stories were obtained illicitly, illegally.
Yeah. And he's got to prove it.
He's got to prove it. And that is the thing. And what is happening so far is that he's not coming within a country mile of doing that.
And he's not actually trying, it would appear, to even recall some of the specifics in this case. I would imagine a judge takes a very dim view of this. Look, Michael, thank you, as ever. We will be dipping in and out of this trial, in case you hadn't already guessed, throughout the course of this show. But there is some other news in town, and I suspect this is going to be big, because Labour is meant to be the party of the workers, right? But a top union boss says that their energy plan will put many, many jobs at risk. Is it now Keir Starmer versus the unions? That's a dodgy place for him to be. Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
It's D-Day in Prince Harry's war against the media as he became the first royal to give courtroom evidence since the 19th century. But did he strike a decisive blow in his mission to silence freedom of speech about the rich and famous? We'll recreate Harry's bombshell testimony, and my royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell, Tom Bower and Paul Burrell, will deliver the unflinching analysis and exclusive reporting you won't find anywhere in the MSM. Harry's evidence, the verdict on Dan Wootton tonight from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News.
Welcome back, everybody. OK, so Keir Starmer could be in a bit of hot water. Just to throw ahead, by the way, at 4 o'clock, we will have the full story from that dramatic day at the High Court where Prince Harry is getting a real going over from the Mirror Group's barrister. But, like I was saying, Sir Keir Starmer is on a collision course with the unions over Labour's green energy plan. And this one will be one to watch in the coming weeks and months. The boss of one of Labour's biggest donors has warned that banning new oil and gas extraction licences in the North Sea could create a cliff edge and damage jobs. Joining me now is a man who's been all over this and has got some fascinating insights. GB News' economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, with On the Money. What on earth is Starmer playing at?
Well, being in opposition is a lot easier than being in government, Patrick. But being in opposition gets tough when you start laying out policies, which Starmer is now doing, presenting himself as a Prime Minister in waiting, and he's got the poll backing to do that, fair dues to him. But he's laying out policies, and different parts of his party and the electorate are starting to get a bit knocked. This green agenda, net zero, it's very much for the sort of lovey section of the Labour Party, the graduate classes in the university towns, people that might vote Lib Dem instead of voting Labour. They love all the net zero stuff, but the unions don't like it. The GMB, the second biggest union, third biggest union in the country, Unite, the second biggest union, they've both spoken out, in particular against Starmer's policies to ban all new investments on North Sea oil and gas. Why? Because we need North Sea oil and gas. 75% of our energy is still oil and gas. Half of that we generate ourselves. We import the other half. But mainly because 200,000 people work directly and indirectly in the UK oil and gas industry, and they're generally well-paid, skilled and semi-skilled blue-collar jobs, if you like. So Starmer at the weekend had to take brickbats. You had Sharon Graham, who's the leader of Unite, comparing Labour's policy of ending North Sea oil and gas investment, banning it outright. She said it will be like coal communities in the 1980s when the Tories just shut down coal pits across Wales, Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire, Yorkshire. Massive political fallout. And then you also had the head of the GMB saying that Labour lacked intellectual, robust knowledge when it came to the oil and gas industry, saying that we're the other GMB, we've been doing oil and gas for 130 years, you should listen to us, your policy is wrong. So Starmer went to the GMB conference in Brighton, it's going on today, and he gave a speech, and in that speech he tried to dodge the question, I'll come on to that, of this ban on North Sea oil and gas. But he gave the union some ideological red meat. He said he wanted to create a publicly owned company called GB Energy to take care of consumers and their energy needs. This is what he said.
Because we're Labour, it is a plan for working people, their jobs and their prosperity. We will create a new company, GB Energy, and through that vehicle we will take advantage of the opportunities that we have. And because it's right for jobs, because it's right for growth, because it's right for energy independence, then yes, it will be publicly owned.
So there you go. Does this add up, though? On the one hand, Starmer is saying to his party, to the country, that he wants to end North Sea oil and gas investment, even though the Climate Change Committee, the sort of government's cheerleaders-in-chief for net zero policy, they say that we're going to be using oil and gas until at least the late 2030s. And Starmer, in his speech today, said to the GMB, we're going to be using oil and gas till, quotes, far, far into the future. So we're going to import all that oil and gas in a world where there's very little energy security.
And who does that make wealthy?
In Iraq, it makes overseas oil and gas companies wealthy. It means the exchange rate gets weaker. Look, it's not easy doing this. Starmer has to appeal to both, as I said, the kind of university-educated classes who might vote Labour, but also to the working and blue-collar classes who might vote Labour. He's trying to keep it as vague as he can. He's sort of dancing on a pinhead. Or we won't ban all new oil and gas investment. But this is what happens, and there's going to be more of this as the general election approaches.
Liam, great stuff, as ever. Liam Halligan, our economics and business editor. That, trust me, is seriously one to watch, because if Keir Starmer manages to score a political own goal there with the unions, with the workers, as it were, then, frankly, that's going to be problems for him. But it's been an incredible day in the High Court. It continues to be an incredible day in the High Court, by the way, where Prince Harry is accused, the press, of having blood on their hands. But as it stands, he's being picked apart. I'll see you in a tick.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's 4 p.m. It's Patrick Christys. Here's GB News, and it is my solemn duty to report to you that Prince Harry is getting an absolute kicking in court at the moment for a man who decided to bring court action over phone hacking and whether or not the press has managed to get hold of information through illegal means. Turning up and not being aware of some of the articles that you're talking about, being able to recall anything, saying that you weren't in distress, or being able to prove any kind of phone hacking is not a great look. But nevertheless, that's where we are. I will fill you in on all of this drama in a matter of moments. But some drama in the House of Commons and potentially the House of Lords as well, because Rishi Sunak wants to swerve the House of Lords in order to get the illegal migration bill through. Is that the only way that we can now do that and fully get control of our borders? I will be talking about all of that shortly. Now, Pride, it's got a month, and companies, as I'm about to show you, are virtue signalling to the max. Has it gone too far, Pride Month? We've got a Pride flag wrapped around a hospital. What's the NHS waiting time like? We've got trains with the Pride flag on it. How many of those are actually running on time, for goodness sake? So we'll be talking about all of that, and in relation to how compatible Pride is with certain fundamental religious communities like the Islamic community. So that's going to be good. And, of course, I'm going to be talking about this. Teachers are quitting or threatening to quit in their droves over naughty kids. Now, I want to know, who's to blame for this? Is it actually bad woke teachers, or is it bad parents? Patrick Christys on GB News. Yes, we are about to go back outside the High Court for some box office Prince Harry drama. GB Views at gbnews.com. You will not believe some of the interactions that are taking place in that courtroom right now, but I will be reading them out to you in a matter of moments after your headlines with Polly.
Patrick, thank you. The news at just after 4 o'clock. As you've been hearing, Prince Harry has accused the government of being at rock bottom. The Duke of Sussex is giving evidence in London against the publisher of the Daily Mirror group of newspapers over alleged unlawful information gathering. He told the court, "Our country is judged globally by the state of our press and our government." He also accused the press of having blood on its hands during his cross-examination at the High Court. Mirror group newspapers denies all allegations. Meanwhile, the US government will be challenged in court over its decision to give the Duke of Sussex a US visa in 2020. That's after Prince Harry's admissions of illegal drug use in his memoir Spare. It's not known if he admitted this for the visa application. US official policies dictate that visa applicants who are found to be drug users or addicts are ineligible for US visas. One of ITV's senior management team has been defending the company's duty of care, telling MPs today there's a significant system of safeguarding in place at ITV. Magnus Broke has been questioned by a parliamentary select committee over the broadcaster's handling of Philip Schofield's affair with a younger male work colleague. Mr Broke also said bullying is absolutely in breach of ITV's company code of conduct amid allegations of a toxic work environment at the daytime TV show this morning. ITV Chief Executive Dame Carolyn McCall is being called to appear before the committee next week to answer further questions. Downing Street says the government is willing to agree another way forward rather than lodging a legal challenge against the COVID inquiry. The Cabinet Office has been asked to present former Prime Minister Boris Johnson's notebooks to the inquiry by June the 12th so that they may be compared to the redacted copies already provided. Baroness Heather Hallett says she'll not be commenting on the legal row. King's counsel for the inquiry, Hugo Keith, says the Cabinet Office is merely seeking to ensure that security-protected information in the national interest won't be disclosed.
Mr Johnson has offered to provide the inquiry with assistance directly. We're grateful to him for his cooperation, and the inquiry team has been liaising with his legal team to arrange for the inspection of the unredacted WhatsApps that he had provided to the Cabinet Office, but which he has had returned to him. We expect to begin that inspection this week.
The Foreign Secretary says damage to a major dam in Ukraine is a catastrophe and an abhorrent act. Thousands of people have had to be evacuated from their homes after the huge 2-mile-long dam in southern Ukraine was severely damaged. Ukraine is accusing Russia of blowing it up, but a member for Putin's United Russia Party is accusing Ukraine of carrying out the attack. Hundreds of homes, streets and businesses have been badly flooded. News here at home, and all boat operations have been suspended off Bournemouth Pier following the deaths of 2 young swimmers last week. A local council spokesperson says the decision has been made pending a conclusion to the police investigation. An inquest into the deaths of the 2 youngsters heard they were part of a group thought to have been caught up in a riptide at the time. Post-mortem examination proceedings are adjourned until September. Ryanair has today cancelled 400 flights amid a French air traffic control strike. Some of the impacted flights are to and from the UK and Ireland. A petition calling for the European Commission to protect flights over France during their strikes has so far been signed by over 1 million people. And a Veterans Memorial Service has been taking place today to mark the 79th anniversary of the D-Day landings. The Defence Secretary Ben Wallace is in France for the service alongside the French President Emmanuel Macron on the anniversary of the 1944 Normandy landings. Also in attendance is Léon Gautier, the last surviving member of the French commandos who stormed the Normandy beaches defended by Hitler's troops. Just some breaking news to bring you. We've got within the last few moments, the police watchdog has made the announcement it has launched a criminal investigation into the fatal collision involving a police motorcycle which was escorting the Duchess of Edinburgh. The officer from the Special Escort Group is being investigated on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving as well as causing death by careless driving. 81-year-old Helen Holland died after being struck by a police escort bike in West London whilst escorting the Duchess last month. That breaking news just into us. More detail as we get it. You're with GB News. Now back to Patrick.
Well, there's only one place to start. Blink and you'll miss it stuff at Prince Harry's dramatic day at the High Court. The Duke of Sussex has been outlining the damage that tabloid press stories has done to himself and his relationships over the decades. He claims that articles containing information which he believes were obtained unlawfully had a destructive impact on his life when he was younger. He released a witness statement, very long, but some of it said, "It seemed to me there was never any let-up in the press coverage of every detail of my childhood by the defendants, journalists and others." The issue that Prince Harry has had so far is that he's had, as yet, by my last count, 18 of the 33 articles that are up for dispute here in relation to phone hacking and information being unlawfully obtained by the Mirror Group. And so far, on every single one of these, he has been asked to offer up any kind of proof whatsoever that he has about this information being obtained unlawfully or phone hacking. He doesn't have that. his solicitors may, although you would have thought they would have made him aware of that. They've also been asked whether or not he's actually read all of the articles or indeed remembers all of them. And on many of the cases, he is saying no, he doesn't remember them and he hasn't recalled reading them, therefore it can't really have caused him that much distress. This is also, of course, about the amount of distress he's trying to claim that is causing him. I'm going to go into the granular detail of this in just a second. There is some really, really startling stuff in here. Startling in terms of how unprepared Prince Harry appears to be for an actual court hearing. But we're going to go over now to GB News' royal correspondent, Cameron Walker, who's outside the High Court. He was near Harry earlier on. Cameron, what are the latest developments, please, where you are?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a pretty startling day, really, for Prince Harry in court, being forensically examined to some extent by the barrister representing Mirror Group newspapers. Prince Harry, in his very strongly worded witness statement released this morning when he took to the witness stand, criticised the state of British journalism and also the state of the government, saying it was at rock bottom. He also alleged that some journalists have blood on their typing fingers, not referring to any of the articles in particular. I think that was more of a broad sense of how he feels about the British media in general. But nonetheless, the barrister, Mr. Andrew Green, KC, has been going through each individual article in forensic detail and asking Prince Harry to clarify his witness statement. And he wants a lot of detail because essentially the KC is trying to find out if Prince Harry has any tangible evidence to support his allegation that Mirror Group newspapers unlawfully obtained information about him in order for their journalists to write articles about him to sell more newspapers. That is the allegation, and that is what Mirror Group newspapers are contesting. I'll just bring you one example of the forensic examination, because clearly this has been going on all day and I don't have that long to tell you about it. But this is about an article dated from December 2003 about the possibility of Prince Harry and his brother Prince William meeting with their former butler Paul Burrell. Now, Mirror Group newspapers barrister Mr. Green said, "Your complaint is about an alleged disagreement with your brother about meeting Paul Burrell. You refer to it as a private disagreement," to which Prince Harry responded, "Yes." Mirror Group newspapers barrister said, "Your brother wanted a meeting, but you were firmly against it." The phrase two-faced swear word, which I can't say on television, may have come from a voicemail, talking about a voicemail interception. In other words, phone hacking. Harry said, "That's how I've always seen it." Now, the barrister, Mr. Green, said, "You agree that the way you've written in Spare suggests you wanted to meet Paul Burrell, which contradicts his witness statement, which was released this morning." Mr. Green said, "You make it clear that you wanted a meeting. Is that account in your book Spare true?" And Prince Harry said, "Yes." Now, Mirror Group newspaper says the account of what you wanted at the time in your witness statement is that you didn't want a meeting. And Harry says, "At the time, I was against a meeting. When I wrote the book, hindsight is different." So I think what the barrister was getting across was the sense that Prince Harry's memoir, Spare, is not the same account as what's in the legal witness statement, which was released this morning. And it's those kind of details which seem to be continually tripping up Prince Harry, to be perfectly honest. There's a number of articles Prince Harry alleges unlawful information gathering, where the barrister has representing Mirror Group newspapers has pointed out that actually there was a number of separate articles written by different publications with the same information written at an earlier date, and therefore doesn't that mean that the Mirror Group newspaper article got their information from the previous publications? To which Prince Harry did not seem to have a particularly tangible answer to that, and I think Mirror Group newspaper barrister was essentially accusing him of speculation. But nonetheless, the case does continue here. Prince Harry still has time this afternoon and indeed tomorrow and to give his evidence and give his testimony. The whole trial itself is expected to last 6 to 7 weeks.
Yeah, indeed, and we are potentially expecting Prince Harry to walk out not in the not-too-distant future behind you there, Cameron, so I will leave you to it for now. It's Cameron Walker there. Thank you very much. Our royal correspondent is outside the High Court. I just want to remind people of essentially why we are here. So Harry is saying that phone hacking and unlawful information gathering was used in order to obtain information about his very, very private and personal life, and that is why he is now under huge amounts of distress. It caused him a huge amount of distress, and that's why we're in court. The lines of attack by the Mirror Group's lawyer is this, which is that Harry didn't read many of the articles which he's complained about, therefore it can't have caused him much distress. That the information that Harry claims was obtained unlawfully was actually already in the public domain, i.e. we didn't have to hack your phones or do anything because this was already out there. They also claim as well that some of the distress that he claims to feel as a result of some of these articles, especially when it comes to things like drug taking, are actually more out of embarrassment than out of the article itself, i.e. it's the cause of his own personal wrongdoing. And every single time we are on about Article 18 of 30 now that Harry is asked something about these articles, it follows a pretty formulaic pattern, which is this. Are you aware of this article? To which Harry normally says, yes, I'm aware of it. They say, are you aware that this article quotes X or was already published previously to being in the Mirror here? To which Harry usually says, no. And then they say, can you provide any kind of evidence or proof, therefore, that it was obtained by phone hacking? To which Harry basically says, no. And then the KC just moves on to another article, which is staggering, really, when you think about it. Michael Coleraw, commentator, joins me in the studio now. We're getting on to the juicy stuff, Michael. We've done Burrell, we've done his relationship with Chelsea Davy. We're about to talk about the Nazi uniform, from what I can gather here. And again, this is just another classic. Are you suggesting there was a voicemail on someone's phone suggesting you were given a tongue lashing by Chelsea Davy? Harry, I can't remember. It's full of it.
What surprises me, Patrick, is that there are so few, if any, killer points in all the testimony that he's given this afternoon. In fact, you look in vain for them. One would have thought that he would have been very thoroughly prepared for this. They had war-gamed it with his solicitors, with his lawyers, with his advisors. Not coaching him, that would have been improper, illegal even, and certainly against best practice, but wargaming him to prepare him for these perfectly legitimate questions. It was completely to be anticipated that the very experienced King's Counsel for Mirror Group newspapers would go through it like this. And what he's trying to establish from the Prince is whether he has any proof, any actual proof to put before the judge who is going to decide this, that he was hacked or he was illegally, his privacy was illegally infringed in any way whatsoever. Now, I've read through the testimony as you have, and we've had the excellent summaries from Cameron, and I don't see it. I cannot see it. Where's the beef? We haven't got it. And I can't believe that he can be so ill-prepared or ill-advised to have gone into court. Because when you're sitting in the High Court or standing, giving evidence, I was the lead witness in two important high court cases, and I spent 2 days in the witness box during the inquest into Diana, Princess of Wales and Dodi. However well prepared you are, you have to be on your toes. You have to be there. You have to anticipate what you may be asked. That's not rehearsal, that's actual preparation. And I'm so fascinated to know why he seems so ill-prepared.
Well, look, his legal team may well be about to come out and say, this is just a witness statement from Prince Harry, we have all of the detail. But from what it appears at the moment, it does appear as though this chap has got on a plane late one night to fly over, is not across the detail, cannot recall lots of the important information, and crucially, Michael, what's happening that we predicted yesterday is a personal crusade taking place here against the British media and against certain people within it, without any hard issues. It is feelings, not facts, and that does not wash in a court of law.
Absolutely not. I'm not doubting his belief in it. I can see his hurt is raw, it's real. His anger is quite clearly there. It's not an exaggeration to say he hates the media, because he certainly has, and from a very young age that was the attitude he's taken. But if you're going to take up the cudgels against them, you've got to be well armed. You've got to be prepared for this. You've got to be anticipating the sort of questions, perfectly reasonable questions, put in a perfectly polite way, in the very formal setting of an English courtroom. You've got to be able to answer the questions. It's no good going through saying, I don't remember, I can't recall, I don't know what you mean. And what is interesting also is to find that Andrew Green, the KC representing Mirror Group newspapers, is quoting his own book, Spare, published on January the 10th, not long ago, against him. There are contradictions from what he's saying now from what he's saying in the book. book. And also bringing up, which he does constantly throughout that book, his own drug taking, smoking weed and so on and so forth, which is going to get him into a lot of trouble maybe.
Well, it is. And you are right to mention that, because shortly I am going to be talking about exactly that. This is not the only case involving Prince Harry at the moment. Niall Gardner of the Heritage Foundation will be joining me shortly. His group have been bringing this case, which could see, emphasis on the word could, see Harry have his visa torn to shreds, essentially, in America. Then he would have to come back here and face the British press all over again. I have got the transcript of this court hearing at the moment in real time. And the latest thing that's just dropped in front of me here is about another article. It's the 19th article entitled "You Did What?" in the Sunday Mirror. And it's details of farm work, etc. So just a pretty generic article about Harry. And this just sums it all up where we are at the moment. It says, would you agree that private information wasn't obtained by the Sunday Mirror, but by phone hacking or other unlawful means? And Harry says, no, the papers wanted to push for more. And then the barrister for the Mirror Group says this: do you recall when you first read this article, trying to build a picture which is necessary of a prince here feeling some form of distress, that having a deep-seated personal impact on him, and therefore him being owed loads of money? And Harry says no, but it's been a stressful experience.
Assertion isn't evidence, you know. These are very serious allegations against a newspaper group that's been going for more than 100 years. They're entitled to defend themselves. If you come at them with these allegations, then come at them with the ammunition to prove it.
Yeah, and this is exactly it, Michael. Thank you very, very much. It's Michael Cole there, who is, of course, the royal commentator. He's been in situ with us all day, keeping his eyes and ears right across this Prince Harry High Court case. We're going to be hearing a lot more about it. You can get more on this incredible story on our website. You need to go to gbnews.com for the best analysis and opinion, as well as the latest breaking news. Your emails are flooding in thick and fast. It has been fast-paced, high-tempo stuff so far today, so apologies for not going to the inbox as yet, but I will do shortly. GBViews and gbnews.com. Prince Harry's court case isn't the only story that we're talking about today, though, because will Rishi Sunak ignore the House of Lords and force through his illegal migration bill? It comes as the Home Office admits it's got no real idea how many Albanians have absconded from migrant hotels and are just in the UK. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
It's D-Day in Prince Harry's war against the media as he became the first royal to give courtroom evidence since the 19th century. But did he strike a decisive blow in his mission to silence freedom of speech about the rich and famous? We'll recreate Harry's bombshell testimony, and my royal masterminds, Lady Colin Campbell, Tom Bower and Paul Burrell, will deliver the unflinching analysis and exclusive reporting you won't find anywhere in the MSM. Harry's evidence, the verdict on Dan Wootton Tonight from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News.
Yes, well, I know what I'll be doing at 9 p.m, and certainly we'll be tuning in to Dan Wootton. What a lineup, what a panel that will be for the verdict. But I can tell you why Prince Harry is involved in legal cases on both sides of the Atlantic today. Arguably, the one in America more serious than the one he's facing here, but I'll tell you why very shortly. Closer to home, though, Rishi Sunak could defy the House of Lords and force his illegal migration bill through Parliament. The Prime Minister claimed yesterday that his plan to tackle the small boats crisis is starting to work, but a number of high-profile figures in the Lords, including the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, have now spoken out against the bill. I've got Olivia Utley here, our political reporter. Olivia, why is it so significant? Why should the public care, the public who've been let down, disenfranchised, non-stop with this idea that we're going to stop the boats, that we're going to get legal migration down to the tens of thousands, that illegal migration is going to stop the taxpayer paying through the nose, etc., etc., etc. Why on earth should the public care about Rishi Sunak now saying, oh, I'm going to put my big boy pants on and I'm going to bypass the House of Lords?
Well, the small boats bill that Rishi Sunak is trying to get through the House of Lords at the moment really should make a difference to the small boats problem, because it means that the government is able to deport migrants without having to go through the laborious process of allowing them to attempt to claim asylum, allowing them to stay in the UK for, on average, 465 days while seeking legal representation. So actually, this bill would give the UK government quite a lot of power to deport migrants. Of course, the issue is that, as we've seen, there's just an unlimited number of migrants trying to get into the UK. So whether it would stop the small boats completely is very much up for debate. It should make a big difference, and Rishi Sunak is now promising, well, threatening at least, that he would be prepared to bypass the House of Lords if the House of Lords vote it down. The problem is that it's quite unlikely that the House of Lords will just vote it down. If they do, then Rishi Sunak can use the Parliament Act, which is this piece of legislation which essentially means that the House of Commons can overrule the Lords. But that is only if the House of Lords vote it down. What they're more likely to do is to amend it to a form where it's pretty much unrecognisable, at which point the Prime Minister has less power to do anything about it. And of course, the Lords isn't the only hurdle that this bill has to get through. There was a hearing in the High Court last year, and the High Court ruled that the Rwanda plan to deport migrants straight to Rwanda without going through the long hearing process was legal, but it's now being taken to the Supreme Court, and we're expecting it to drag on and on and on. So anyone hoping to see sort of Rwanda flights taking off in the next few months might have to wait a little longer. But the fact that Rishi Sunak is prepared to even talk about bypassing the Lords at least shows that, you know, there is intent behind his plan. He knows that he's got to be seen to be doing something, otherwise the election is lost.
But what kind of political pushback would there be if Rishi Sunak decides to bypass the Lords? Because we have an elected chamber in the House of Commons, OK? I understand completely that Rishi Sunak has not yet stood for election, but the party has, and the Tories have always been, at least on paper anyway, the party of clamping down illegal migration. So it's reasonable to say that people voted for a party that would try to do something like this about what's going on in the Channel. The House of Lords, unelected, lots of stuffy people, including a few bishops who are dead against this. What would be the political pushback from Rishi Sunak trying to bulldoze through a law that actually, despite what you might read on Twitter, is popular with the British public?
Well, it'll be really interesting to see, because, as you say, it is popular with the British public. All the polling and focus groups, etc., suggest that this is one of the most pressing issues to the country. So probably it sounds as though Rishi Sunak is banking on the fact that this law would be so popular that there wouldn't be too much political pushback on pushing it through. But the Parliament Act hasn't been used in this way, sort of bulldozing the laws, as you put it, hasn't been used in this way since 2004. So it's pretty much almost unprecedented. So I don't know what the reaction would be in the House of Lords to this.
Well, it can be argued, can't it, as indeed I would probably argue, that we are facing an unprecedented situation at the moment. Suella Braverman herself has called it an invasion on our southern border. We have a huge amount of taxpayers' cash being spent every single day on asylum seeker hotels, etc. We have a national security issue. We've had someone who was hoping to join the Marines stabbed to death on the streets of Britain over an e-scooter by a bloke who had 2 previous issues with murdering people and dealing drugs right across the continent before wandering in here and being put in a school. So I would argue that it is an unprecedented situation, and one that maybe calls for unprecedented action as well. But Olivia, we're going to have to leave it there. I'm afraid, Olivia Utley there, our political reporter. Now, in case you haven't noticed, it's Pride Month. To be honest, if you didn't already know that, I have just one question. How? Pride, gay pride, is everywhere. So if you go to a railway station, you might see a train in the rainbow colours of the pride flag and the trans flag. There we go. At a London hospital, there's what's been called a large reproduction of the intersex inclusive pride flag. Fantastic. King's College London there, I believe it is. Remarkable stuff. How much money did that cost? How's your NHS waiting time? Mercedes UK's Twitter account is really getting into the spirit of things. That's good. That's going to make me more likely to buy a Mercedes. And if you go to the official BMW, they've had to do it. The Merc did it. Beamers have got to do it as well. You'll be able to see those rainbow colours again. Strangely, though, BMW's Saudi Arabian Twitter feed, they're not celebrating Pride. I wonder why that is. The social and political commentator Bushra Sheikh had this to say, and I think this is fascinating. She says, Pride Month isn't celebrated by Muslims. LGBTQ ideology does not align with Islamic teachings, and there is nothing homophobic about it. In 2010, many Muslim organisations raised concerns about where this minority group was heading with children and trans. Now look, it's being force-fed. I think this is a fascinating moment in British history and in British time, because we are seeing huge waves of multiculturalism, and we have done for some time. A lot of that, of course, is with the now indigenous, previously first-generation, second-generation Islamic community in Britain. We are also seeing a more vocal pride movement than ever. And I cannot be the only person who can see some issues coming down the line there. So I will be talking to Bushra a little later this hour, and I really do think that's going to be a fascinating discussion. How does our country and the values of tolerance and inclusivity, something that should apply to race and religious freedom and religious difference, as well as the LGBT community, actually come together? I'm not sure it will, so we'll have that chat very, very shortly. There's lots more still to come there between now and 5 o'clock, and we'll bring you news of a second big legal case involving Prince Harry later today and keep you well on top of the first one. But first, it is your latest headlines with Polly.
Patrick, thank you. The top stories this hour. Prince Harry has accused the government of being at rock bottom. The Duke of Sussex is giving evidence in London at the High Court against the publisher of the Daily Mirror over alleged unlawful information gathering. He said, "Our country is judged globally by the state of our press and our government." He also accuses the press of having blood on its hands during his cross-examination. Mirror Group newspapers denies the allegations. Downing Street says the government is willing to agree another way forward rather than taking legal action against the COVID inquiry. The Cabinet Office has been asked to return the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson's notebooks by June the 12th to compare them to the redacted copies already provided. Inquiry Chair Baroness Heather Hallett says she will not be commenting on the legal row due to the pending litigation. The police watchdog has announced it's launched a criminal investigation into the fatal collision involving a police motorcycle escorting the Duchess of Edinburgh. The officer from the Special Escort Group is being investigated on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving, as well as causing death by careless driving. 81-year-old Helen Holland died after being struck by a police escort bike in West London last month. The Confederation of British Industry has received the backing of its members for new reforms introduced following a series of sexual harassment allegations. 93% of voting members supported the new changes at the industry body introduced in the wake of the claims. A number of major companies, including John Lewis, Aviva and ITV, quit from the organisation following the allegations. And Ryanair has cancelled 400 flights amid a French air traffic control strike. Some of the impacted flights are to and from the UK and Ireland. A petition calling for the European Commission to protect flights over France during their strikes has so far been signed by over 1 million people. More on all those stories by heading to our website, gbnews.com.
Yes, I have got an action-packed final half hour of this hour coming your way. Let's crack on with Prince Harry, and the phone hacking trial isn't the only legal case involving him today, and I wanted to nod to this because this might actually be bigger. In the United States, a federal judge will hear an appeal to unseal his US immigration records following revelations in his book that he took drugs. Now, I'm joined by Niall Gardiner, who's a director at the Margaret Thatcher Centre for Freedom at the Heritage Foundation in Washington, DC. Just before we crack on, can you explain your involvement in this particular issue, your group's involvement in this particular Harry court case over there, please?
Yeah, definitely, Patrick. Thanks very much for having me on the show today. And so I'm the director of the Thatcher Centre for Freedom at the Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation is America's largest publicly funded organisation with over 500,000 members. And the Heritage Foundation has issued a Freedom of Information request urging the Biden administration to release Prince Harry's immigration records. And the Heritage Foundation is doing this, of course, in order to ensure accountability and transparency from the Biden administration. There's a strong public interest in releasing Prince Harry's immigration records. And Heritage is a very important voice on immigration issues. It has been the loudest voice, I think, in Washington for many decades in terms of calling for the enforcement of immigration law by the United States. So the Heritage Foundation has a very strong interest in ensuring that America's borders are secure and that immigration law is applied robustly and fairly.
Yes, absolutely. And the implication, well, what you want to find out is whether or not Harry lied about his drug taking on his visa application in a way that would now make his visa null and void, and therefore, presumably, he would have to be deported back to Britain, which potentially will be bad news for people of Britain who might not want him here. But where are you up to with this court case, then? What is the latest?
Well, so this afternoon, there's a hearing before a federal judge in the Washington, D.C. federal court, and the judge will hear evidence from the Heritage Foundation's oversight project team and also from the Biden administration's lawyers. And the Biden administration has been so far stonewalling the release of Prince Harry's immigration records. We're calling for the release of those records. We're suing the Department of Homeland Security in the United States to have those records released. So a federal judge will be hearing arguments on both sides. He'll be issuing an opinion on this over the course of the next few weeks. So this is the beginning of a long legal battle here, but we are certainly fighting to win this case. We believe there's an overwhelming public interest in the release of Harry's records. We also want to ensure that Prince Harry did not receive any kind of preferential treatment as a celebrity from US officials. All of this would be revealed if his immigration application was released to the public. So the matter is now with a federal judge. It's a very serious matter. We are expecting as well, a great deal of media interest, of course, in the United States, also in the UK, on both sides of the Atlantic, and what is happening. This is a very closely watched legal case, but we are certainly fighting to win, and we have an extremely, I think, powerful case for the release of Harrods records.
Well, it will be absolutely fascinating. And watch this space. And Niall, I'd really appreciate you coming on. I wanted to just make sure that everybody was aware it's not the only issue on Harry's plate at the moment, as we, of course, get ourselves a bit lost, I think, in this High Court case taking place at the moment. Look, thank you very much. And that was Niall Gardner there, who is the director of the Margaret Thatcher Centre for Freedom at the Heritage Foundation in Washington, D.C. Want to keep your eyes and ears on. However, more than 3/4 of teachers back here in the UK want to quit. And they are saying that one of the main reasons is aggressive pupils, all right? I struggle to believe that that is singularly the case. I do, however, believe that bad parenting and bad woke teachers are quite possibly to blame. I'm going to be talking about that, and I am also very much looking forward to having a conversation about, given that it's Pride Month, OK, are there conflicts down the line with certain religious groups, i.e. some segments of the Islamic community, and this ever-increasing embracing of the pride flag, etc.? I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
That is the High Court, where Prince Harry walked into a few hours ago, and we are expecting him to walk out of very, very shortly after what has been an absolute mauling in there, it's fair to say, for the Prince. But we're going to dip in and out of that court case a little bit later on. Now, in case you haven't noticed, it's Pride Month. To be honest, if you didn't already know that, then I have just one question for you. How? Because Pride is everywhere. If you go to a railway station, you will see a train with the rainbow colours on the Pride flag. Don't ask whether or not that train is running on time, people. How dare you? Just know that it supports gay pride. At a hospital in London, there's been what's called a large reproduction of the intersex inclusive pride flag. Great stuff, that's fantastic. How are the NHS waiting times doing? Mercedes UK Twitter account is really getting into the spirit of things. A good rainbow coloured Mercedes badge there. And the official BMW Twitter account, you'll see the rainbow colours around the edge there, good. However, strangely, BMW's Saudi Arabian Twitter feed doesn't seem to be celebrating pride. And the social and political commentator Bushra Sheikh had this to say earlier on Twitter, and it really gripped my attention, this. Pride Month isn't celebrated by Muslims. LGBTQ ideology does not align with Islamic teachings, and there is nothing homophobic about it. In 2010, many Muslim organisations raised concerns about where this minority group was heading with children and trans, and now, look, it's being force-fed. I'm very pleased to say that Bushra joins me in the studio right now. Thank you very much. I think you have identified an issue that is simmering under the surface and is about to boil over, which is, to be perfectly honest with you, when the Pride Brigade meet elements of the Muslim community. What's going to happen?
I mean, look, this isn't just about the Muslim community. This is about Orthodox, Abrahamic faiths as well, and people probably outside of any kind of religious compass. We are going to be met with a lot of pushback from this because 10, 20 years ago, when you have traditional values and you have ethics and you have a moral compass that originates from the Word of God, which is technically does not align with the LGBT community, you are going to challenge those things. And we are going to see this grow. It's not something that's going to be quiet, especially within the Muslim community, because our compass is built against anything that the LGBTQ community stands for.
Yeah, indeed. And Christianity has been remarkably soft on it. The argument for that would be it's moving with modern times in a way that incorporates modern Britain. Perhaps the Muslim community is prepared to be more fundamental and rigorous in its traditional beliefs. Right. And that, I suspect, is going to lead to a key battle line being drawn in the sand at some point. And I don't want to use the word riots, but I can certainly see huge issues.
Of course, issues are going to become apparent when you are pushing an agenda onto a community or onto a society that doesn't want it. Now, this is still a very minority group. It's not a big portion of the population, and yet it is propaganded and broadcast like it is a majority, which it isn't. So if you don't want, or a society doesn't want those teachings to be in a school, in our 4- or 5-year-old school books, then we will fight against those things. And like I've said before, this is about freedom of speech. What I don't like is when we're categorised as homophobic, Islamophobic or an intolerant society or a community, because we're not. Because when people say Britain is tolerant, actually Britain's not very tolerant, because if we were really tolerant, then we wouldn't have laws, would we? Because I personally, don't want a person to go and steal or come into my house and do as they please. So we're not as tolerant as we claim.
Is there a key difference, though, between just accepting people who are in same-sex relationships and want same-sex marriage and things like trans indoctrination of children in primary schools? Because I think there is a difference there, is there not? And some people might say that the fundamental interpretation of the Islamic religion is kind of against all of that.
It is. It is.
Yeah, well, it is, isn't it?
It's against, homophobia. It's against trans. It's about all of that, because fundamentally we do believe in a core belief, which is Adam and Eve. So being gay and being Muslim is condemned, it is not allowed. But again, this is a very wide conversation. There's a lot of nuance in this as well, because in Islam, an idea does not have a consequence. A thought doesn't have a consequence. It's behaviour and actions that have a consequence to it. So thinking that you have, some kind of feelings for the same sex isn't condemned. It's when you act on those feelings, you see, and that's where Islam comes into it. We are all about prevention, Patrick. We're always about prevention, because finding a cure for things can be very, very difficult. And unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever way somebody wants to look at this, being Muslim and LGBTQ does not sit together.
And we live in an incredibly multicultural society, of which the people of the Islamic faith make up a huge percentage, and a growing percentage as well, of people in this multicultural society. We have already seen situations like at one primary school in Birmingham where there was some kind of cack-handed attempt at a sex education class that involved an element of the same sex. There were big protests outside there, and not all of that was savoury, to be fair. There were things about, people burning in hell and all of that. And if we just play the tape forward, I think I can see this coming a mile off. I suspect you can as well, which is in 10 years' time, when every single business in the UK and every single school in the UK has a full month of, abject rainbow-coloured pride events, and the Muslim population has increased by however much, and there being massive issues literally on the streets of Britain. So what happens there? How do we stop that? Well, or does that is this an inevitability?
This is definitely an inevitability. But what I will say is everyone should be treated with kindness. So despite not having the same ideologies or the same views, that does not mean that you can be unkind to a person. And that's where we talk about harmony. Being gay or wanting to be trans, those things are going to exist in our community. So it's really incumbent upon us, of people of faith, of any group, to understand that that does not give us the entitlement to be abusive. We can have those ideologies that coexist, but fundamentally people need to understand that we are against all of it. So if we feel like our children are being indoctrinated and conditioned to think in a way, we will push back on that.
I think this is so fascinating, because I think for a lot of people out there, non-Muslims, who have been feeling as though they've been banging their head against a brick wall, where they are broadly tolerant people, they don't like the way that they see perceived indoctrination of children, they don't think that men should be in women's spaces, for example. And then you end up in this bizarre situation where I think for a lot of people, they will be looking at the way that the Muslim community is handling this. I'm speaking very broad brush term there, but the Muslim community is handling this, and thinking, well, I'm actually quite glad that somebody's standing up to it. It is fascinating. I really appreciate you coming on to talk about it. We're out of time on this. Look, this issue's not going away at all, far from it. Thank you very much. Much appreciate that. Joining me on that issue. Get your emails coming in. It's a good talking point. gbviews@gbnews.com. But now to an alarming study which has found that thousands of teachers want to quit because of aggressive pupils. It says that more than 3/4 of the teachers are unhappy with jobs' growing demands. Female teachers blamed the likes of social media influencer Andrew Tate for growing misogyny from male pupils. Tate is currently being investigated for people trafficking in Romania, for what it's worth. And the survey of 1,000 teachers found that 78% of them would take another job with a better work-life balance. 64% were unhappy with their pay and said that they would take a higher-paid job. 20% said they expected to leave and felt that they were unlikely to be in the profession in 5 years' time. So some spoke for a decline in respect for teachers. A growing level, they said, of misogyny from male pupils influenced by toxic role models on social media. Joining me now is Mark Lehane. He's a former teacher and head of education at the Centre for Policy Studies. Mark, great stuff. Thank you very much. Now, I wonder whether or not it is really about a toxic masculine culture in schools. Is it not the case that they've always been feral kids?
Look, there have always been naughty kids in schools, and I don't think there was ever really a golden age of school where all the children behaved and were really keen to learn and the teachers could get on with it. If we take a step back for a minute, though, I think when I talk to people across the sector still, overall, average behaviour in our schools in England now is much better than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. I really do.
Really?
I think it has got better. I think after 2010, the government made it a lot easier for head teachers to enforce their will on their schools, keep schools safe and happy. They made it easier to expel really violent or disruptive pupils. Before 2010, it was virtually impossible to do that. You would face endless legal challenges. So I think things did get better because of a lot of hard work by teachers and head teachers and so on. But I think since COVID, like a lot of things, it's just that much harder to get the basics right now. Children aren't coming to school quite as often. Disaffected kids, when they're coming in, they're out of the good habits we got them into. And I think that's what we're seeing in these survey results now.
Is it bad parents?
Listen, there is no doubt that we need more parents to be authoritative with their children, tell them what to do, and most importantly, to back schools up when there's an issue at school. I always said to parents, I was a head teacher for 5 years, I always said to parents, listen, we're not always going to get everything right, but I need you to work with us in front of your child. I need you to back us, and if you've got a concern about what we've done, talk to us quietly.
Is there an issue with fatherlessness, absent fathers at all, do you think, in this? I can't help but wonder whether or not a lack of a stable home life... Oh, we are going to the High Court now, where Prince Harry is just getting into his black Range Rover, where he will be leaving. It has been an action-packed day for him, of course. Now, we're bringing you bang up to date with the very latest revelations from inside that courtroom in a matter of moments as Prince Harry pulls away from the High Court. It's been a difficult day for him, where he was asked a series of questions by the Mirror Group's legal barrister, who was essentially really picking him apart, saying... you haven't really got that much proof, have you, for phone hacking? I will be returning to the Harry story in a second. Sorry, back now, of course, to the education story with Mark. Thank you. Sorry about that, Mark. Right, so, look, I wonder whether or not there is an issue with, broken homes.
Listen, in a dream world, every child would come to school from a happy, settled family, whatever that family makeup might be, but that's never been the case, and schools are really good at dealing with children that might be unsettled for whatever reason, but there is no doubt the last years have been harder. I think what we need to remember is, just over 3 years ago, we went into lockdown, schools were closed for an extended period of time, teachers and schools stepped into the breach to try and keep learning going, lots of schools were trying to get food parcels to home and stuff like that, and we haven't really had a break in schools for everyone to get their breath, catch their breath, and get on top of things again. OK.
Should we be very worried, just to bring us back to the very root of this story, which is that basically a huge number of teachers now are saying that they are absolutely certain that they're going to leave the profession? One element of this, of course, is naughty kids. But is this a bigger concern now, do you think?
I think it's always been a big concern. I think it's a particularly pertinent concern right now. I think people are ground down, but the good news is the things we need to get behaviour better in schools, to make them a pleasant place to learn and teach, those powers are in head teachers' hands. We just need to back them and support them as they use them.
Look, Mark, thank you very, very much. Great stuff. That's Mark Lehane there. He's a former teacher and head of education at the Centre for Policy Studies, reacting to that study which appeared to show that teachers were going to be leaving the profession in their droves, down to naughty kids. I can't help but wonder whether or not parenting has got an issue there. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News. Make sure that you do stay tuned, because we have got pictures of Prince Harry, of course, leaving the High Court. He has an action-packed day within that courtroom where, by anyone's standards, really, he's been picked apart big time by the Mirror Group's lawyer. Going in with feelings, not facts, has not done well for the Prince. Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
It is 5 p.m, it's Patrick Christys, it's GB News. I've got a very busy final hour for you. Prince Harry has just left the High Court. It has been a shocking day for the Prince. He's been picked apart from start to finish by the Mirror Group's barrister. I will be revealing all of the detail, including the topics covered, very, very shortly. Rishi Sunak, though, he's going to be taking on the Lords. Could this be the only way to get that illegal migration bill through and then flights to Rwanda off the ground? I'll be speaking to a Lord and a serving Tory MP on this to get their take. I'm also going to be discussing this story as well. Very important. It's the 79th anniversary of D-Day. And when we look around Britain today, I want to pose the question, do we think we've done our brave heroes proud? So we're going to be talking about all of that. And finally, as well, yes, that's right, the Dream Boys is fast approaching. I am raising money for the mental health charity Mind There Is Me quite a while ago, strutting my stuff, if you want to call it that. And so far, you wonderful people have raised 56 and a bit £1,000 for the mental health charity Mind. JustGiving.com/fundraising /challenge Christys is that link. justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christys. On the 28th of this month, I will be getting my kit off on stage in Bromley with those lovely chaps who I do not look like, it's fair to say, to raise money. Patrick Christys on GB News. If we can get it to 60 grand, that would be great. But anyway, I'll stop rattling the can now. Yeah, get your emails coming in. gbviews@gbnews.com. Loads coming your way, including the latest explosive claims in that Prince Harry saga. What's he playing at? Now there's your headlines.
At the High Court in London today, Prince Harry has been accusing the government of being at rock bottom. The Duke of Sussex has been giving evidence in London against the publisher of the Daily Mirror over alleged unlawful information gathering. He told the court, "Our country is judged globally by the state of our press and our government." He also accused the press of having blood on its hands during his cross-examination. Mirror Group Newspapers denies all the allegations. Meanwhile, the US government will be challenged in court over its decision to give the Duke of Sussex a US visa in 2020. That comes after Prince Harry's admissions of illegal drug use in his memoir, Spare. It's not known if he admitted his drug use for the visa application. US official policies dictate that visa applicants who are found to be drug users or addicts are ineligible for US visas. Here, one of ITV's senior management team has defended the company's duty of care, telling MPs there is a significant system of safeguarding in place at the company. Magnus Broke has been questioned by a parliamentary select committee over the broadcaster's handling of Philip Schofield's affair with a younger male work colleague. Mr Broke also said bullying is absolutely in breach of ITV's company code of conduct amid allegations of a toxic work environment at the daytime TV show this morning. ITV Chief Executive Dame Carolyn McCall is to appear before the committee next week to answer further questions. Downing Street said today the government is willing to agree another way forward rather than lodging a legal challenge against the COVID inquiry. The Cabinet Office has been asked to present the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson's notebooks to the inquiry by June the 12th so that they may be compared to the redacted copies already provided. Baroness Heather Hallett says she won't be commenting on the legal row. King's Counsel for the inquiry, Hugo Keith, says the Cabinet Office is merely seeking to ensure that security-protected information in the national interest is not disclosed.
Mr Johnson has offered to provide the inquiry with assistance directly. We're grateful to him for his cooperation, and the inquiry team has been liaising with his legal team to arrange for the inspection of the unredacted WhatsApps that he had provided to the Cabinet Office, but which he has had returned to him. We expect to begin that inspection this week.
International news, and the Foreign Secretary says damage to a major dam in Ukraine is a catastrophe and an abhorrent act. Thousands of people had to be evacuated from their homes after the huge 2-mile-long dam in southern Ukraine was severely blown up. Ukraine is accusing Russia of blowing it up, but a member for Putin's United Russia Party is accusing Ukraine of carrying out the attack. Hundreds of homes, streets and businesses have been flooded. Here at home, all boat operations have been suspended off Bournemouth Pier following the deaths of 2 young swimmers last week. A local council spokesperson says the decision has been made pending a conclusion of the police investigation. An inquest into the deaths of 2 youngsters heard they were part of a group thought to have been caught up in a riptide in the sea. Post-mortem examination proceedings have been adjourned until September. Within the last hour, the police watchdog has announced it's launched a criminal investigation into the fatal collision involving a police motorcycle escorting the Duchess of Edinburgh. The officer from the Special Escort Group is being investigated on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving, as well as causing death by careless driving. 81-year-old Helen Holland died after being struck by a police escort bike in West London last month. Ryanair cancelled 400 flights today amid French air traffic control strikes. Some of the impacted flights are to and from the UK and Ireland. A petition calling for the European Commission to protect flights over France during the strikes has so far been signed by over 1 million people. The Confederation of British Industry has received the backing of its members for new reforms introduced following a series of sexual harassment allegations. 93% of voting members supported the new changes at the industry body introduced in the wake of the claims. A number of major companies, including John Lewis, Aviva and ITV, quit from the organisation following the revelation of the allegations. And today, a Veterans Memorial Service has been taking place to mark the 79th anniversary of the D-Day landings. Defence Secretary Ben Wallace is in France for the service alongside the French President Emmanuel Macron on the anniversary of the 1944 Normandy landings. Also in attendance is Leon Gautier. He's the last surviving member of the French commandos who stormed the Normandy beaches, defended by Hitler's troops. You're with GB News. More news as it happens. Back now to Patrick.
Well, it has been a fascinating bombshell day. Prince Harry's dramatic day at the High Court. He is suing Mirror newspapers over allegations of phone hacking. And the Mirror Group's barrister landed plenty of blows during this cross-examination. In the last few minutes, Harry has now left the High Court. He's the first senior royal to give evidence there for more than 100 years. In his witness statement, he claimed this: "It created a huge amount of paranoia in my relationships." This is, of course, in relation to phone hacking and information being gathered through illegal means. "I felt that I couldn't trust anybody, which was an awful feeling for me, especially at such a young age." On his relationship with Chelsea Davy, which they went into at length, the Prince said, "We couldn't even meet in private or have arguments over the telephone. It was just that feeling of being under surveillance all the time." They also spoke about Paul Burrell, who Prince Harry called a two-faced swear word, and they also referred to that infamous evening where Harry decided to wear a Nazi uniform. The main problem for Prince Harry throughout all of this is that he is trying to claim that the information that was leaked to the British press came through phone hacking, illicit means, and it caused him distress. But when he was put under serious cross-examination by the Mirror Group's legal team today, unfortunately for Harry, he could not prove that any of it was brought about as a result of phone hacking. It was a suspicion, a feeling, and that is fair enough. There is no doubt that he genuinely feels that way. In fact, there's no doubt that he may well be right in some of these cases, but of course he can't prove it, can he? And that's the problem, unless his legal team can going forward. There was also an issue for him, is that he couldn't recall reading some of these articles and therefore couldn't really legitimately say that they had caused him all that much distress. It was a really remarkably strange performance from a chap who one would have thought would have been incredibly well briefed by his legal team and who would have wanted to turn up to court and actually be on top of that brief. Let's speak now to GB News' royal correspondent Cameron Walker, who is outside the High Court. Harry has left. What's the verdict on day one?
Yeah, Patrick, I mean, we were talking yesterday, weren't we, that this was not going to be an Oprah interview for him. This was not going to be a friendly promotional interview for his memoir Spare. And I think Mr. Andrew Green, Casey, representing Mirror Group newspapers, I think perhaps proved that point with his forensic cross-examination of Prince Harry's witness statement. It was a very strongly worded witness statement. Prince Harry talked about British journalism being at rock bottom, saying that some journalists have blood on their typing fingers. He spoke of his paranoia, of his distress, of the deeply personal stories and information ending up in the public domain. Well, the barrister representing Mirror Group newspapers went through line by line his complaints. He did make the point, he did concede, the barrister representing Mirror Group newspapers, that Prince Harry has been subjected to, ever since he was a child, of press intrusion. But he did say that doesn't necessarily mean that the information was obtained unlawfully. So just a couple of examples to give you. The article involving that the Mirror wrote about Prince Harry's cannabis taking when he was a teenager. Mirror Group newspapers barrister Mr. Green put it to Prince Harry, but you were third in line to the British throne at that point, a young man. Was that not in the public interest for that information to be published? To which Prince Harry responded, public interest or interest to the public. Mirror Group newspapers barrister also pointed out that a Buckingham Palace spokesperson also conceded at the time that it was very much in the public interest to disclose that information. Prince Harry questions where that information came from, but Mirror Group newspapers also questions the fact that it was the now defunct News of the World that first broke that story, not a Mirror Group newspaper publication. And that moves on to my next point, and to the point that the barrister put across to Prince Harry on several of the 33 articles being tested in this case behind me over the next over today and obviously tomorrow as well. Previous articles that Prince Harry's complaining about, written by Mirror Group newspapers, a lot of that information, the barrister put to Prince Harry, was actually already in the public domain. He referred to one instance of information already being published in the Mail on Sunday, 2 days before. Of course, nothing to do with Mirror Group newspapers, and indeed the Daily Mail as well. Now, Prince Harry said in response to that each publication had to get their own unique take on the story, just getting that little bit more information in order to please their editor, and he alleges that unlawful information gathering is what they did to do that. Of course, Mirror Group newspapers is contesting those claims. Mirror Group newspapers also talked about the fact that some of these articles that Prince Harry's complaining about actually had on the record palace spokespeople confirming the stories. Prince Harry said that a palace spokesperson would never, ever concede to a journalist's personal, private information, particularly when it comes to medical information or injuries, and question the fact, why did the journalist ask a palace spokesperson for a statement in the first place? And Prince Harry's conclusion, at least, is the information must have come from an unlawful method. Another big point, and I think this perhaps is going to keep biting Prince Harry, is that his autobiography Spare was used against him in court today on a number of occasions. The Mirror Group newspaper barrister Mr. Green said that one version of events in Spare is not the same version of events that was on your witness statements given to the court this morning. Prince Harry also, the point that the Mirror Group newspaper barrister was getting at was that Prince Harry appeared to not be familiar with the 33 articles being given being tested in court today. The case very much continues tomorrow. The cross-examination continues, and then perhaps we'll see exactly what Prince Harry has to say tomorrow and whether he can pull it back.
Cameron, thank you very, very much. And a cracking stint from you outside the High Court today. Cameron Walker there, GB News' royal correspondent. Now, loads of detail to get at and loads of very memorable incidents for the British public. Part of the problem with Prince Harry bringing this case is that it reminds us all, doesn't it, as if we needed reminding, of things like the time that he wore a Nazi uniform at Paul Burrell, for example, issues that he may have had with Chelsea Davy, his trip to Spearmint Rhino, a trip to notorious restaurants and things that happened as a result of that, including, of course, his drug use. Now, there's a couple of key ones that I'm going to delve into with Michael Cole, our royal commentator and expert who joins me now. Some of the detail, Michael, is absolutely staggering, and how Prince Harry isn't across it is even more staggering. So I've got another latest one here. I've been sitting with this transcript every single day. It's been a live transcript. It's been updating throughout the course, and it is made for absolutely fascinating reading. I'm just going to read you one of the last things that was said in court before it closed for the day, and it's in relation to a Daily Star article on the 13th of December 2004, and there is a quote which refers, I believe, to Chelsea Davy, which is, she bombarded him with 10 sexy phone calls and texts a day. And they say, do you believe that this must have been obtained through your phone records? And Harry says, yes, by Mirror Group newspapers. And then they say, are you suggesting that someone at another media outlet obtained records of your calls with his then girlfriend, Chelsea Davy? Do you have evidence of people getting that and doing that. And he says, no, the evidence has been destroyed. And this is a really key point, because a lot of this keeps cropping up with Harry, where he goes, I believe that this was phone hacking. I believe that this was through some kind of nefarious means. And they go, OK, fine, where's your evidence? And he goes, well, I haven't got it. And that's a problem.
D-Day for the Prince of Litigation. Went the day well? I'm afraid it did not, from the Prince's point of view. I've read through the whole of the testimony that's been given today, which Cameron has been summarising brilliantly. And in all of those 33 rounds that we've been going through, I can't see where Prince Harry has once put a glove on Mirror Group newspapers, because his hurt is real. His belief in what he's saying is profound. His anger is incendiary, but anger is a very bad master when you're in the cool atmosphere of an English courtroom. And what has amazed me is that he seems either ill-prepared or ill-advised, because I can't believe that he didn't wargame this with his lawyers and his advisors beforehand. They weren't allowed to coach him in any sense, but perhaps the distance, 5,500 miles between London and California, has made that difficult, because he cannot answer many of the questions that have been put to him. Perfectly reasonable questions, put for him perfectly politely. And in a way, I felt the Mirror Group counsel, Andrew Green, was trying to help him, trying to lead him to say, look, have you got some proof for this? And the thing is, belief is not proof.
The Mirror Group newspapers, barristers actually had quite an easy time of it because of examples like this. Now, it's important to say the insinuation would be if you have obtained some information through phone hacking, you would, in the media, if you had that, then get the scoop with it. That's the point of why people did this. And so when Harry was confronted with excerpts like this, the Daily Express on the 4th of December 2004, 9 days before the Mirror article was published, this is about a holiday in Africa. The Sun also had a similar story before the Mirror. He was then asked, well, were you aware of the fact that these stories were not exclusives to the Mirror Group whatsoever? They were previously published by other outlets. If we'd have hacked your phone, is the insinuation, if we'd have hacked your phone, then we would have put that out there first if we'd have done anything like that. Harry was not aware of this stuff. How can a man who's going to court to try to accuse, presumably at the cost of millions of pounds, by the way, Mirror Group newspapers of hacking, not be aware that other articles had been put out previously by other news outlets, which would strongly indicate that they weren't the ones to blame?
Well, that's an excellent question, and I really think it's one for his legal advisors, because he's actually gone into the battle without many weapons, or without any weapons, as far as I can see. He hasn't got plausible answers to many of the things, and half the time he's saying, I don't remember this article, I didn't read this article at the time, and it had no impact upon me at the time. And yet the whole essence of the thing is, I have been seriously damaged by illicit, illegal means that have been employed by Mirror Group newspapers to pry into my private life and that of my friends, and that's ruined my life. I don't doubt for a minute that he's had a hard time, and he's been under scrutiny throughout the whole of his life, even from a child. But that is not the same thing as saying that a respectable newspaper group that's been in existence for more than a century went out of its way to do illegal things. They've admitted one episode where they did break the law, and they've quite candidly suggested that. It was a case from the People a long time ago, and they've admitted that. But every single other case is being hotly contested in a cool way by their King's Counsel, Andrew Green. And as you say, I think he's having a fairly easy time for it, because you would expect that the Prince would come. This is his moment. Don't forget, this is case brought by him.
This was his moment to do one of several things, such as say, I have definitive proof that this was accessed as a result of phone hacking, which he has not done. He could also have really hammed up the level of personal distress that it has caused him, because he could leave the proof and the evidence of phone hacking to his legal team to expose later down the track. He could really have gone big on distress today. Michael, it's been great to have you on the show. Thank you, but I will leave
We're only at half-time.
We're only at half-time, but I will leave this particular segment with a reading, an excerpt of the transcript from inside the court today. And this, I think, epitomises where we are. The distinction between the truth and Harry's truth, which does not wash in a court. Are you aware that other papers reported the same story? Harry, no. Are you alleging that something in this article was obtained by phone hacking? Harry, I don't know. Has it caused you distress? Harry, no. There we go. We look forward to day 2 tomorrow, don't we? Thank you very much, Michael. Great to have you on the show. You get loads more on this incredible story on our website. Simply head to gbnews.com for the best analysis and opinion, as well as all the latest breaking news. Prince Harry's court case isn't the only story that we're talking about today, though, because Rishi Sunak will ignore, supposedly, the House of Lords, force through his illegal migration bill. What will this mean? Is this the right thing to do? Can we swerve the Lords and finally get some flights taking off to Rwanda? But also, crucially, the true extent, the true shocking extent of the amount of Albanians who have absconded in this country is absolutely incredible. You will not believe it when I tell you. Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Dubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It is the 79th anniversary of D-Day, and in a few minutes I will ask if our World War II heroes get the respect that they deserve, and I've been asking you as well at home or wherever you are listening now, what you make of whether or not we've done them proud in the terms of the country that we've got today. GBviews at GBnews.com. So I'll talk about that in a moment. But before that, Rishi Sunak could defy the House of Lords and force his illegal migration bill through Parliament. The PM claimed yesterday that his plan to tackle the small boats crisis is starting to work. A lot of people scoffed at that statement, but a number of high-profile figures in the Lords, including the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, they've spoken out against the bill. With me now is the Conservative MP for Dudley North, it's Marco Longhi. Marco, thank you very, very much. Why on earth should we be even considering what the Lords have to say? Are they not getting in the way of what the people want and what the government wants? Is it time Rishi swerved them?
OK, so you did break up on me there, but if you heard, if I heard you correctly, you're asking me if I agree with Rishi's proposed actions. I completely agree with them. In fact, I'd like to see this implemented as quickly as possible, because the Parliament Act of 1911 does dictate the governing arrangement between the House of Lords and the House of Commons, and it gives the House of Commons supremacy. Before 1911, there was no supremacy, and the only way you could resolve matters was by the monarch actually appointing more peers to the Lords. So that now has changed since 1911. The only thing that I think, and I'm not a legal expert, that might happen is that it can only be implemented within the time frame of 1 year. In other words, I'm just worried, I might be wrong, but it needs researching, that we might still be in this impotent situation for another 12 months. And I just cannot think how painful that might be for myself and for other MPs who want to see this stopped immediately.
Well, you lose the election now. This is the thing. And for Rishi Sunak, it's all very well and good standing on a plinth and saying, I want to stop the boats, but he's saying it's working, OK? He's saying that his plan is working. Now, a lot of people hope it is. And I don't mean Rishi any disrespect when it comes to this, Marco, as I'm sure you're aware, but how can he say it's working when people can just say, well, the wind direction has changed, we've had hundreds, if not thousands, of Albanians just absconding, so this idea that we're on top of the Albanian issue is, I think, for the birds. We've got new routes opening up with India across the Channel, and Labour is starting to emerge as a party that might actually be better at controlling our borders. And the taxpayers' bill is going through the roof, and we haven't had a flight take off to Rwanda. Look, Marco, I hate to say it, but it's not working, is it?
Look, what is also for the birds is to imagine that a Labour Party that wants completely open borders would be any better than the Conservatives. Have we actually done a good job of it? No, we haven't. But what we need to do is now bring real effectiveness to this situation. And all I want to do, what I have done all the time, is to represent my Dudley constituents and pushing to make this happen. What I would love to see happen is to actually get those flights off to Rwanda immediately. If it is subsequently found that that was done in some weird way illegally, well, then we take a slap on the wrist afterwards. We left the European Union for a reason, because we wanted to become a sovereign nation. We should be doing that now. The ECHR is only advisory anyway. And when it came to the vote of giving prisoners a vote, I don't know if you remember that, back in 2004, I think it was, under Tony Blair, it was kicked into the long grass. That was an ECHR directive which we chose to ignore. Well, if we could ignore it then, we should ignore it now as well.
Is it as black and white for you, Marco, as the only way Rishi Sunak is going to stop the boats would be to bypass the Lords and get this illegal migration bill passed and bypass the ECHR and get flights taking off to Rwanda and just take whatever political fallout that there is on the chin? Is that just the cold, hard, fast reality of the situation?
That's the way I see it. Unfortunately, all of the opposition doesn't see it that way, and even some of my own colleagues. But for me, that is the political reality of the situation. And the political fallout actually would be very good for Rishi in so many ways, because he would start seeing his approval ratings going up and up and up in the red wall seats who voted for this.
Yes, no, indeed. And you know what I think would happen, Marco, as well, is a bit like what happened in Australia when they had the hoo-ha about the turning the boats back policy. When the Labour Party over there came into power, they didn't reverse that policy because the issue had actually been solved. And I can't help but wonder if Rishi Sunak is at a bit of a crossroads here now and he has to do something knowing that the Labour Party would probably not reverse it if they actually came into power. Can you imagine if it actually stopped the boats and there was this big issue with the fact that maybe we'd illegally sent a few people to Rwanda and then the Labour Party come in? They're not going to reverse that if it means that people start crossing the channel again, are they?
Exactly right. That's it. That is absolutely correct. And what I absolutely despair about certain colleagues and even the Archbishop of Canterbury is that they completely ignore the question around deterrence. It's a bit like having a nuclear armament, isn't it? You know, the whole purpose of having a nuclear bomb is not to use it. If we have the Rwanda plan in place, we might have to use it initially to show that we mean business, but then I would expect that the crossings would stop, as indeed they did stop as soon as we actually voted the act into place when we did under the previous Home Secretary.
Marco, thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated. It's Marco Longley there, who's the Conservative MP for Dudley North. He's pretty clear, OK? He says the only way that Rishi's going to stop the boats and stand any chance of the next general election is to do what he's at least flirting with now. Bypass the House of Lords, get the illegal migration bill straight through there, get it enacted, bypass the ECHR, get the flights taking off to Rwanda. That would be an absolute deterrent, wouldn't it? Maybe, just maybe, and whisper it quietly, you're about to see Rishi Sunak realising that this is the only chance that he's got to actually get this done, and then doing it. Loads more still to come between now and 6 o'clock, though. On the 79th anniversary of D-Day, I will ask what our Second World War heroes would make of the UK today. But first, it's your latest headlines with Polly.
Patrick, thank you. The top stories this hour on GB News. As you've been hearing, Prince Harry has accused TV presenter Piers Morgan of intimidation, saying as a consequence of bringing this claim, he and his wife Meghan have been subject to horrific personal attacks. The Duke of Sussex has been giving evidence at the High Court in London against the publisher of the Daily Mirror over alleged unlawful information gathering. He said, "Our country is judged globally by the state of our press and our government." He also accused the press of having blood on its typing hands during his cross-examination. Mirror Group newspapers denies all the claims. Downing Street says the government's willing to agree another way forward rather than taking legal action against the COVID inquiry. The Cabinet Office has been asked to return former Prime Minister Boris Johnson's notebooks by next week to compare them to the redacted copies already provided. The inquiry chair, Baroness Heather Hallett, says she won't be commenting on the legal row due to the pending litigation. And the police watchdog has announced it's launched a criminal investigation into a fatal collision involving a police motorcycle escorting the Duchess of Edinburgh. The officer from the Special Escort Group is being investigated on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving, as well as causing death by careless driving. 81-year-old Helen Holland died after being struck by a police escort bike in West London last month. The CBI has received the backing of members for new reforms introduced following a series of sexual harassment allegations. 93% of members voting to support changes at the body introduced in the wake of the claims. A number of major companies, including John Lewis, Aviva and ITV, quit from the CBI following the allegations. And Ryanair cancelled 400 flights today amid a French air traffic control strike. Some of the impacted flights are to and from the UK and Ireland. A petition calling for the European Commission to protect flights over France during strikes has so far been signed by over 1 million people. More on all of those stories if you head to our website, gbnews.com.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
And this is how the numbers are stacking up today. The pound can buy you $1.2417 and 1.1611 euros. The price of gold is £1,581 and 61 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 closed today at 628 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
I've got some fascinating emails coming in about a topic that I'm going to be talking about shortly, which is the 79th anniversary of D-Day. And on that day, 1,449 British lives were lost. It's been described as the longest day, of course, the turning point, many would argue, in World War II and ridding the continent of Nazis, etc. I just wondered whether or not, looking around the country today, our veterans and the people who lost their lives there, sadly, would be proud of what they see now, whether or not we've done them justice, that fighting spirit, those heroes, really. Do we do justice to those people? I'm going to be talking to someone from the British Legion shortly, but some of the emails that I've got from you here are absolutely fascinating, actually. I'm just going to read a couple of them out quickly. Helen says they'd be shocked at the state of this country at the moment and actually wonder if it was worth the fight for freedom. There's quite a lot of this. We're not doing our veterans proud. There's no name on this one. He makes reference to RAF Scampton, the home of the dam busters, being used for, to house illegal migrants, etc. So that's the kind of general flavour in the inbox at the moment. And it is a real shame, I think, isn't it, to think that maybe those people who gave the ultimate sacrifice for this country on the darkest of days would not necessarily be that happy with what they see today. But, of course, I'll talk to someone from the British Legion about that very shortly. gbviews@gbnews.com. But there is more on the illegal migration bill, actually, whether or not Rishi Sunak will defy the House of Lords and invoke the Parliament Act to make it law. A few minutes ago, I heard from the Tory MP Marco Longhi. With me now, and I think this is vitally important, is Conservative peer, Lord Peter Lilly. Thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. So you could be bypassed under Rishi Sunak's plans if it happens. How do you feel about that?
Well, I very much hope the Lords will not collectively try to delay the bill. The House of Lords exists simply to, its only power is to ask the House of Commons to think again, to say, look, we think that clause should be changed, that clause should be added, that clause should be deleted, send it back to the House of Commons. The House of Commons doesn't agree, it comes back to us, and normally we will accept the House of Lords, as the House of Commons decision, because they're the elected House, they have the power. In extremis, the House of Lords can delay something by voting against it, and then the government can bring it back the next year, and the House of Lords then loses any right to alter it at all. That's very, very rare. I think if the House of Lords were foolish enough to go to that extreme and force the government to invoke the Parliament Act to drive it through next year, that would be the House of Lords committing suicide. The people of this country would say, these people are so out of touch, are so opposed to everything we stand for as a country, that they've got to go. So I don't think the House of Lords is in a suicidal mood, and I hope it won't do that.
Well, that's a vital point that you've just made, and I'm glad that you've raised it, because does the future of the House of Lords actually hinge on the way that they handle this illegal migration bill? We do have a democratically elected party, not government necessarily at the moment, because Sunak obviously hasn't stood for election, but a democratically elected party, and that's the way it works, that won a stonky majority at the last general election. We have an illegal migration bill that does have public support, despite what you may see on social media. It does have public support. That is currently being blocked by the House of Lords. I mean, it would be suicide, would it not, for the House of Lords to keep knocking it back? I mean, if they want to continue to exist, they're going to have to actually wave it through and just accept it, despite what, a particularly loud bishop might think of the whole thing.
Well, at the moment, the House of Lords isn't blocking it. The House of Lords is considering it, suggesting various amendments and so on. Some of those will be passed, will go back to the House of Commons. What the crucial point will come then, will the House of Lords try and persist in altering or rejecting the bill? If it does, that's, in my view, a risk of the House of Lords committing suicide, but there's no way that the
what do you back that? Sorry, Lord
subsequently force the bill through.
Can I just drill down on that a little bit? If the House of Lords continues to try to make these amendments to hold it up, to stall and to delay, I would be fascinated to know your answer on this. I mean, would you, as someone who sits in the House of Lords, actually openly call for it to be abolished?
I wouldn't, but then I've got a rather vested interest, so I shouldn't take much notice of my view. I rather enjoy having this platform, and I've been pulling the platform away from under my feet. But the same is true, of course, of all members of the House of Lords, of all parties and none. They would be pulling their own platform from under their own feet if they did something so foolish as to reject a bill which has been passed overwhelmingly by the House of Commons, which has the overwhelming support of the British people, which clearly is urgent and important, and to try and delay that for another year would be absurd. I can't believe they'll do it.
Do you think this is as serious as being an outright national emergency, and actually there should be more urgency attached to what Rishi Sunak is trying to do with this illegal migration bill? And dare I say it, some of the people in that House of Lords will have massive houses, will have massive estates, and are not the ones who are offering to put people up in their spare rooms, and it is ordinary members of the British public who are having to deal with asylum seeker hotels on their doorstep and the consequences of an insecure border in a way that the House of Lords won't. Should they be given a short, sharp wake-up call, maybe made to go and stay in one of these asylum seeker hotels?
And share a room, perhaps, with other asylum seekers. Yes, that's rather an interesting idea. Perhaps I'll put down an amendment to that effect. No, a lot of them just out of touch. The Liberal Democrats put down a wrecking amendment which would have killed the whole bill if it had gone through. And the spokesman said we shouldn't even bother to try and control immigration. It's pointless, he said. When I said, so that's your view, is it, the Lib Dems? And yet you were... I think what a catastrophic effect that would have on the housing problem in this country. It's bad enough letting 600,000 people a year net come in legally. But if we had no controls, the housing crisis would be beyond measure. And yet the Lib Dems oppose every single plan to build new houses throughout the country. So we've got this incredible hypocrisy resident in the House of Lords, particularly in the Lib Dems, to a lesser degree in the Labour Party, to quite a strong degree in the crossbenchers.
OK, look, thank you very, very much. I must say it's been fantastic to have you on the show, and good luck. I hope that you personally are not abolished anytime soon, although the institution itself may well face a different future.
Can I say a word about your next issue about the D-Day?
Oh, yeah, please.
My father was first lieutenant on the minesweeper, which swept the mines away the night before the landing to clear the way for the landing, for which he got the DSC, which is a very high award. He never told me quite why he got it. But I'm sure he did it that this country should be free. He knew when we were free, we'd sometimes make good decisions, we'd sometimes make bad decisions, we sometimes have good policies, we sometimes have bad policies. But he'd much rather we were free than that we weren't. So he would be, even if things are going not so well at the moment, he would say, thank God we won, thank God we're a free country. He might even, I don't know, I never discussed things like Brexit, but I think he would have supported the idea of us taking back control over our own destiny.
Just quickly then, Peter, whilst you've raised this, would your father be happy with the country that he saw today? Do you think we've done people like your father justice?
He didn't fight, and nor did any of his generation, in order to have justice done or get rewards or get medals or anything. He did it. I remember asking him, I said, were you doing it because of the terrible things the Nazis were doing to the Jews? He said, we didn't know about that. If we had, that would have been a good enough reason. Why we fought was that we didn't want other people to make our laws, control our policies, run our country. And we thought if Germany ever got control of Europe, it would control us. Okay. Nazi Germany. So that I don't think they're worried about how they should be respected, how they should be treated. They fought because they were patriotic people. When they voted Labour, very conservative. My father wasn't conservative. They did it for their country, and they'd be satisfied that their country is free. They wouldn't be satisfied necessarily with the policy of the government at any moment. Half of them would approve of it, and half of them would disapprove of it. But they'd be glad they had the choice.
OK. All right, look, thank you very, very much. There's Lord Peter Lilly there, Conservative peer, just teeing up perfectly the topic that I'm going to be discussing in a matter of seconds, actually. It's the 79th anniversary of D-Day. And we'll be asking if our World War II heroes get the respect that they deserve. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
It's D-Day for Prince Harry as his battle with the press reaches the High Court. But will he regret becoming the first royal in 130 years to take the stand? We'll bring his bombshell testimony to life, voiced by an actor, before getting the reaction of royal experts like Tom Bower and Lady Colin Campbell. Plus, Paul Burrell responds exclusively to the Duke's latest jibes. Harry's evidence, the verdict on Dan Wootton tonight, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. only on GB News.
Welcome back, it's Patrick Christys here on GB News. Right, so we are, of course, now marking 79 years since one of the most significant events of World War II. D-Day played a crucial role in the Allies defeating Nazi Germany. And it got me thinking, and actually, to be honest with you, it's something that a lot of you email in about almost every single day at some point, which is, do we honour our veterans and our war heroes and their memory well enough in this country? I'm very pleased to be able to say that I can speak with the Director of Remembrance at the Royal British Legion, Philippa Rawlinson, who is in Normandy for us. Philippa, thank you so much, and thank you for waiting on the line. I know we've kept you hanging there for a little while, but do you think that our brave British heroes, the people who fought and sadly in some cases died on D-Day, are remembered well enough in this country and respected enough?
Well, at the Royal British Legion, we're focused on ensuring the service and sacrifice of our armed forces family is never forgotten. It's always remembered and remembered year round. And the public support we see at our services certainly suggests it is. Today in Normandy, we've held two services. Firstly, at the British Normandy Memorial this morning, and then at lunchtime at the Commonwealth War Graves Commission Memorial at Bayeux. And at both, we heard firsthand from veterans themselves, their experiences, whether it be Stanford as a young seaman on HMS Fratton, or Ken Hoy with his poem about his experiences at the memorial. And to see them speak and to have so many members of the public there, we can say safely that there is a lot of support for them. It's overwhelming at services like today. The recent one we had at the National Memorial Arboretum to mark 60 years since the end of national service, or during the Poppy Appeal. You know, remembrance of us, the service and sacrifice of our armed forces family is so important, and anniversaries are a great opportunity to get people talking. And we're really thinking ahead to the 80th anniversary of D-Day next year, and inviting people to join the RBL, to go onto the Royal British Legion website and let us know where our D-Day veterans are, so we can make sure we commemorate with them, so that they know that their service and sacrifice is honoured by the country today.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I will absolutely leave the politics out of it with you, Philippa, and we talk about some other issues about whether or not they might be proud of the country that they see before them today. But when you talk to veterans and have previously spoken to people perhaps who were there on D-Day or were a part of it, what did they fight for? What were they saying to you and people like yourself? What were the reasons why they fought for this country, you know?
I think that they're fighting, as or Peter Lilly was saying earlier, for freedom, for their country, for their home, for the families that they had left behind. And I know that their families were very much in their thoughts when they were taking part during the battles. And they think very much of their fallen comrades. They don't think about themselves as heroes. They think about the young men that fell by their sides, and the memory of them is truly moving. And we say we've heard some of those testimonies and experiences today, and it's the grit and determination of the veterans that we welcome back to our services each year is phenomenal. And to see them stand and come forward and lay their wreaths in memory of those that fell by their sides is truly humbling, and is something that we're proud to be able to facilitate at the Royal British Legion.
No, absolutely, and thank you for all of the great work that you do at the Royal British Legion and for keeping their memory alive, actually, really, as well, in many cases, and I think for reminding people as well of that sacrifice that people made, so that people like you and I can have our freedom and enjoy the country and the world that we live in today. So, Philippa, thank you so much. There's Philippa Rawlinson there. She's in Normandy. She's, of course, the Director of Remembrance at the Royal British Legion. It's the 79th anniversary of D-Day. I was asking whether or not people think that people who've died and fought on that day really will be proud of what they see before us today. Michelle Dewberry is up next with Jubes and Co.
Yes, so moving, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you hear about all those D-Day stories and you listen to some of those veterans who I have so much respect for. On my programme, I'll be showing examples of some of the state of the youth today.
Yeah.
A question in my mind is it time to bring some form of national service into this country to help, I don't know, sort out the youth, bring back some respect for the elders, bring back some discipline, respect for the law and order, and also I've been glued to this Prince Harry thing, Patrick. I actually sued newspapers for the exact same thing that he's doing it, and his lawyer was my lawyer.
No.
Yes, yes.
Oh, my gosh.
And the period that they're referring to, I used to go out with Prince William's best friend. So it's like a trip down memory lane for me.
You've got to watch. You've got to watch. Fantastic. Right, Michelle Dewberry up next with Jubes and Co. I will see you tomorrow at 3. Make sure you stay tuned. It's going to be great.
Hi there, and welcome to the latest GB News forecast. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A lot of cloud across the UK today, and another cold day for the east coast. In the west and the far south,
Still some warm sunshine, but I think for many it is a cloudier day compared with recent days. High pressure still sits to the north of the UK. We've still got this easterly airflow, but overnight it's brought in an extensive covering of low cloud, and that low cloud sits over East Wales, the Midlands, into eastern England, central and northern Scotland. That's the way it continues into the evening. The best of the clear spells will be in the far west and the far south, where we've got those clear spells across Northern Ireland, western Scotland, northwest England. Temperatures will fall away overnight, a few mist patches, and in some sheltered spots, mid to low single figures. So a chill in the air, but that's where the best of the sunshine will be as we start off Wednesday. Elsewhere, a lot of low cloud continuing to persist, and some spots of drizzle likely where the cloud is thickest in the east, especially over any higher ground. But during Wednesday morning, and more especially into the early afternoon, I'm confident that the cloud will burn back towards the coast, still staying dull and a bit chilly on that North Sea coast, but elsewhere plenty of warm sunshine breaking through and temperatures reaching 23, 24 Celsius across central southern England. That's where the warmest spots will be. Into Wednesday evening, once again that low cloud in the east will tend to creep back westwards. Again, the clearest skies will be towards the west, Northern Ireland, western Scotland, northwest England, once more seeing the lowest temperatures and a few mist patches as we start off Thursday. Otherwise, generally high single figures, low double figures, and we've got that cloud covering to begin things on Thursday. Roughly the same sort of places as the mornings up to Thursday morning, with that cloud burning back to the coast once again. Temperatures, however, are rising later this week. Increased levels of humidity, especially in the south, mid to high 20s possible.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.